confidence to pull it off. Morton calls good game. Unbelievable. Sergio Ramos wins! First ever CRL World Champion! Team Liquid is going to be your champion! Mugi 2021! He's done it! World Champion! The Clash Royale League starts now!
We are more than halfway through our Clash Royale League 2023 season, and this picture is starting to coalesce, and we will have a lot of answers to a lot of questions this weekend. Hello, and welcome to Clash Royale League for July. I'm Rich Slayton, joined by Andrew Guy and Joshua AC Sharon for what, Josh and Andrew, is going to be a really exciting weekend.
That's right, the predictions champ is here, baby. CRL 2023, 3 more months for me to be on top. What are we here to talk about? Me, or are we here to talk about Clash Royale League? What's up? I'm excited. Rich, we haven't cast together in a very long time. I miss you, my friend.
Well, it's really great to be here, and Josh, I'm sure you're excited for this weekend as well.
I mean, are you kidding me? We have Igor, and he's back. This is so exciting. I've been waiting so long. Yeah, I heard he practiced so much this past month in order for him to qualify. And for those that don't know, before he qualified, he posted on Twitter, he did 18 games of practice. That's how much practice he did in order to qualify. That is insane. He's so talented.
Well, you have to win a few games, and it might be just around 18 to win a golden ticket. Andrew, take us through what we're doing this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, your format might look a little different than Igor's. For most of us out there, we're going to have to play a lot more than 18 games to get ready. We got to work all the way through that Path of Legends to get to the top 1,000 to get to our qualifier, which was going on just a little bit ago. After that qualifier, we take those top 8 players to go into a double elimination bracket. And of course, why are we here? It's about those golden tickets to get to World Finals, which is just around the corner. But how does every single month work? Well, it's in-game dual format. It's double elimination, of course. And, you know, like I said, 8 players. And if you don't know what the in-game dual format looks like, well, you got 4 unique decks. You can't repeat any of the cards in any of those decks. And you should probably be using those evolutions in 3 of those decks. I'm just saying.
Well, Josh, we do have a few of our golden ticket winners already solidified. Who's going to World Finals?
That's right. Well, I mean, every single time that there is a month, Mohamed Light is winning. But that's not actually how it works. The golden ticket winner for March was Mohamed Light. But then it just becomes who finished second place. April, we had Pandora, Pedro for May. June, we had Mugi. And July, this is where it's going to all come together. We're going to have a fresh champion, an actual true winner of a golden ticket.
Now, keep in mind, Josh, that those account for 7 of our 16 slots for CRL World Finals. We also have our Clash Royale League leaderboard, where the top 7 players in points will qualify for Worlds and as well. And taking a look at this, we have multiple players here, 4 in fact this weekend. Morton, Faust, Sosa, and Ruben, who are currently in that top 7 and can add some huge points if they don't win a golden ticket to help secure that route to World Finals. And of course, we've seen some major jumps in the leaderboard, so a lot of players still in the hunt this month and of course with the next 2 months remaining. But really right now, Andrew, it's all about this weekend, this bracket. There will be one golden ticket winner who will guarantee that slot. And then, of course, there will be a lot of points given away. And man, Andrew, we have some bangers lined up for today.
I mean, we really do, man. This is such an important month for these players. You know, our producers were talking before the show what this month means. And a lot of these guys, this is their moment to start building that confidence that Mo Light talked about in his post-match interview, his post-win interview. No one's here to stop you. It's all you. Why is Mo not here this month? He's not here because of Mo. That's why. You don't need to think about that. These 8 players, some of the best in the world, some of the old guard, some of the new guard. We talk about Ruben and Igor. Well, what about people like Faust, Sosa, and Ardentois? It's going to be all about who's here to stay and who's been here. And of course, the guy at the very top of the leaderboard, Morton. Can he put it all together? We shall see. But yeah, I mean, you guys heard me just talk talk about it, and I'm sure it's something that we're all going to need to talk about, so we might as well take a moment to do it right now. Mohamed Light isn't here this month, right? And it's something that a lot of people are talking about on the internet. You know, what does that mean for this month? And I think, again, I'm going to steal from our producers here. I think it's one of the most important months in CRL, if not the most important month so far, right? We all know what happened for the rest of this year, right? And probably what's going to happen for the remainder of this year. But this month in and of itself could be the one thing that starts that fire that means that, hey, maybe the winner of this monthly final is the person that actually wins our world finals.
There is a big opportunity here, of course, to get a golden ticket, unadulterated golden ticket, if you will. And then, of course, the extra points that are now on the board for whoever fills in with those extra spots not being taken by Mohamed Light. Now, Josh, we already have some great matchups. Obviously, Morten versus Igor, a 2019 World Finals matchup recurring here. But anything else you're excited to see, maybe hopeful to see today in this tournament?
I really want to see Arden Toas. It's not even necessarily against a specific player. I'm just so excited to see what he can do this month. Every once in a while, he impresses me, and I think he's one of the best players in the world. And then the next month, he struggles. So it's really just Arden versus anybody is what I'm most excited to see.
You know, Andrew, speaking of Arden Toas, he's up against, in our first round, another former world champion and another former world champion who got that by going through Morten and SK Gaming. Do you want to see that rematch happen in our second round?
I mean, I would love to see that match. I actually think that's probably, it's either Arden and Ruben or Arden and Igor is the match that I really want to see. And the reason is because last year, Arden was probably my favorite up-and-comer, and he struggled a little bit at World Finals, which is what you expect. Now he's kind of feeling what you want to call, or what you can call, a sophomore slump. So the idea of someone that I found is like my most exciting player of 2022 that wasn't like a top dog, going up against one of my favorite players of the old era, whether that is Igor or Ruben. I want to see the changing there. I want to see the different play styles, you know, and that's what I'm looking for.
Well, speaking of exciting, let's get to Andrew's most exciting portion of the broadcast, and that's the predictions. And there's not much separation here. Josh and I both on the same train, picking Morten Faust Soso alongside Andrew. But the big difference here, Andrew picking Ruben, going with Old Guard. Josh and I both going with Arden Toas. Josh, why are you picking Arden here over the former world champ?
Well, I think Arden, his playstyle, I feel like is going to be kind of difficult for Ruben. Arden's playstyle is very aggressive and in your face, and can I throw 18 elixir and can you defend it? And Ruben, he wants to play slow, which usually should have the advantage in that. But Arden, there's something about him where he's so excellent at being aggressive, and players don't know what to do, and even Ruben is going to struggle in that.
You know, Andrew, talking about Arden Toas and that aggression, we do have Evos active throughout this competition. That makes the YOLOing style of Arden Toas a bit more dangerous. How do you see Ruben overcoming that?
You know, it's really interesting. AC touched on one of my favorite things about both these guys, the methodical slow play of Ruben and the aggression from Arden. I do think that the evolutions might favor Arden in that sense, but who knows? Because, you know, I think that Firecracker will favor Arden, but I think Royal Giant will favor Ruben. And then it all comes down to where the barbs are going to be. Will Mortar be there? I don't know. There's so much. But the other thing that I want to talk about, and it's perfect because we're about to get into our first match, is we all picked Morten. All three of us picked Morten over Igor, which... it doesn't feel that crazy to say out loud, but when I look at it on paper, it feels wrong. It feels like one of us should have picked Igor. So now, Rich, you've been leading the show, and now I'm going to turn it around on you. Why not go with Igor over Morten? Is it because only 18 games?
It's the 18 games. It's that, you know, this is still Igor's photo from World Finals 2019, right? That just shows how in and out of the game he is, right? He doesn't have, he's not around. And I've been saying this for this whole year, that I think that if Igor actually dials in, he might be one of the most dangerous threats to Mohamed Light come to the end of the year. But I just don't know if Igor's dialing it in. He's just so naturally talented. He can, Igor and Mugi are both the same way, right? They are both world champion level when they are dialed, but how dialed are they? And I think that the answer to that question is what Josh said, is that Igor is relying on talent, not on hard work. The other side of that, though, is that Morten is primarily content creation. So who knows? Yeah. This is kind of a tight one, but I got to pick Morten just because his hands are on the game more.
And I think the other thing that we haven't really talked about a lot, you know, obviously Mo not being here, the old world champions, is the evolutions are here in CRL competitive. They're available for every single game. It is dual mode. You could use evolutions in every or all 4 of your games. And that's the other part of, you know, this whole month with Mo not being here, a different golden ticket winner, evolutions being in. This is also the month, Rich, that you were talking about beforehand. Evolutions could change everything. Who knows if Mo would have come out and dominated this month. And so I know this is all a very long tangential conversation, but I think it comes back to your point of Morten has played so much more that he knows these evolutions interactions inside and out. And I use that term very specifically on purpose. Evolutions interactions. AC, Rich and I are on the cast for this first one. Do you think evolution should be in every single game played today from every single competitor?
I am so happy you asked me that question. So basically, Evos are the new champions, champions are the new legies, and legendaries and everything else is the new commons. You should be having Evos in every single deck. And champions, you don't even need to do that anymore. It's insane to see the development of the meta.
Well, let's go ahead and get into it. And yeah, we'll see AC in a bit. Andrew, I want to maybe adjust some things here. Now that I see that Igor is playing from
in space,
from the set of the main character's bedroom in the '90s movie Hackers, I'm honestly thinking that he might be on a whole different level. Plus, it's been so long since I've seen him. He has a beard now. He has a little goatee going. So this is maybe a scarier Igor.
I mean, he's probably stoked that you called that a beard. I don't think anyone has even called the facial hair that I have a beard, and I'm in my 30s. And the other part of it is, do we try to get Igor to throw on some Angelina Jolie braids? I don't know. We'll see.
Well, we'll see if he turns into a full-on serial killer in this one. Drill going opposite direction. Drill Golden Knight. Expecting a NATO most likely for the last card for Morten. This Drill deck has been popping up a little bit, both with Golden Knight and with Mighty Miner, but of course, some nice spots for Mighty Miner with your duels as well.
Yeah, I like this deck pick by Morten. You know, Drill has become the new win condition of favor. You know, with Firecracker, it was pretty much only Hog EQ, and then it became Drill because the cycle is just brutal and the synergy with the Drill is really exceptional. I've even seen Hog now 2.6 be used with Evo Skeletons. So there's all different iterations popping up. And then, of course, dual mode, you know, we're seeing Golden Knight, like you said, Rich. There's just too many other good decks to use Mighty Miner in.
Golden Knight and Skeleton King meeting at the bridge. Reminding about Igor, of course, last year unable to find his way into CRL, but in 2021, you know, we're kind of sleeping on this one, Andrew. We mentioned 2019. In 2021, he ended up 3rd place in our first season of solo CRL. So, you know, you talk about Igor's skill level. That season was Mohamed Light, Mugi, and Igor in our top 3. So still one of a complete world-class player, and I'm very curious to see if any of the ring rust actually is a factor.
I mean, so far, not at all, Rich. I mean, that was a really excellent defense. You saw some high archers there to distract the Firecracker. A fireball went right on top of her, and then good defense on top of the Drill. This Graveyard, he's been trying to create a little bit of space with, but Morten's been doing a good job of body blocking at the bridge. So as of right now, it doesn't look like anyone is out of practice, if you will, even though Morten hasn't been doing as much competitively this year. And, you know, Igor's been kind of, you know, pulling an SB on us, just showing up whenever he wants, or is SB pulling an Igor? I'm not exactly sure, but he's playing this really clean.
Yeah, the only challenge here, you just see the results of that. The arrows used on the opposite end during the Graveyard push didn't get the Firecracker that went to the left-hand lane. And Igor really loves in this situation that he has both arrows and Fireball, but was forced to use the Fireball at the bridge on a regular Firecracker. And then, of course, the Evo Firecracker comes in and gets involved. So just a little bit where the last set of arrows did not kill a Firecracker, forced him to get his spells out of sequence. And now you see the result of that, Morten having the lead.
Yeah, I'm really curious about these barbs kind of synergizing with the deck here, and maybe now he can get some dual lane pressure. I'm not exactly sure. Again, really nice job by Morten by setting the line really hard at the bridge. And, you know, for our very first game of CRL in dual mode with champions, you know, both players going to, I'd say, you know, the two most likely. I guess RG is the other one, but really barbs have kind of tied with RG in usage.
Yeah, I mean, people are finding places for Barbarians to be used beyond just in Lava Hound. Of course, we may see some Lava this weekend. Someone might put that as their 3rd option, but this Graveyard deck has certainly been a popular one. 1 minute left, triple elixir about to flow. The lead right now, pretty significant for Morten, and he has it in both lanes. So we'll see if Igor can battle back here. Graveyard, of course, able to turn this match on a dime.
Yeah, this is where Igor really needs to step things up. So he's got his barbs in tanking. He's got a double spell going on that right-hand tower. But Morten with his Firecracker way behind King Tower and his Golden Knight up high does a really good job. And then, you know, Morten is just kind of doing what he knows works. All right, you can do all that fancy footwork. I'm going to just go drill Firecracker at the bridge with the NATO and look at all the damage I'm going to get. And that's why a lot of people are saying that Firecracker is the most broken Evo in the game.
I mean, Firecracker's up there in the Hall of Fame of broken. She is so powerful, and it's the extra HP, the damage on. That's a nice Golden Knight connection. A lot coming in. It's not just the extra damage that she does. You know, she can kill a tower so quickly, but it's the extra HP. You can defend her and keep her on tower. And right now you see Igor doing really good damage overall, yeah. But with the nuclear missile that the Firecracker carries on her shoulder and that extra beefiness, if you don't take care of her quickly, she can just be devastating the way we just saw right there.
And now this is a big moment for Igor, right? We know Igor, he's not exactly a player that gets super tilted right away, but when he is tilted, he's tilted, and it's a bad thing. I saw a smile there. He's a lot older now than what we're used to calling his matches, so hopefully that maturity will get him calmed down. And the other part of it is what just beat you? Maybe lean into that. Let's get some aggressive Firecrackers at the bridge. Let's pile it on either with a Hog EQ or with, you know, drill yourself. But instead, he's going to maybe go to Royal Giant.
Yeah, more likely than not, and Morten going bait. So let's see what Morten can do with the classic deck that made him into the player he is today. And no, this is interesting. Firecracker, so not going RG here.
And that's a nice use of the ability there from the Monk to get some splash in both lanes.
And I'm curious to see if Morten is, if he's going to be using any sort of Evos in this one or not.
And a little bit of a overspend there, unfortunately for Igor. Probably going to have to eat these Dart Goblin shots.
Dart Goblin's range is so annoying and deceptive, and now you see Morten starting to get in rhythm just because Igor forced a little bit out of his. Lead not too insurmountable, though, so far, Andrew. Only a little less than 200 HP.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if we're going to see Hog here from Igor, which would actually not be the worst for him. And he's got a lot of good ways to help clean up those wall breakers without having to use, you know, his log or even his Ice Spirit. I think guards, Firecracker, there's a lot of good ways to get around there.
It's really interesting seeing the Monk in what I think you're probably right on the Hog deck, which would normally be running Archer Queen rather than Monk. And I'm wondering if the pairing here is primarily to try to get Monks in front of Evo Firecrackers and use that reflection to keep her on the board even longer.
Yeah, or, you know, if maybe he's thinking Mortar, right? You know, it would be a little surprising to see Morten go Evo Mortar in Game 2 against Igor, but, you know, I'm here for it. And getting word here, this is the first time Morten has used this deck this season. Makes sense, you know, because, you know, you literally just said Barbs have been finding their way into all different types of decks, and now one of the best in the world to do it with bait has found a great place for it. And now Igor finally gets a Hog Rider out with 40 seconds remaining in regulation.
And that Monk getting some decent reflection on the Princess, so the EQ will get her off the board. And here you're seeing, you know, you talk about a lot of decks, the value. Protect your Magic Archer, protect your Musketeer, and now it's protect your Evo Firecracker. And she is just hanging out on the board long enough that she might have squatter's rights.
I mean, legitimately, that's what she does now. She lives forever. That extra HP that you talked about, I mean, she's literally just won 2 games in a row. This one a lot less competitive than the first one. And that's exactly what I think a lot of players have to latch onto today, man. Doesn't matter how the first game goes, these Evos are going to abuse you. That Firecracker is going to abuse you. So if you lose Game 1, figure out a way to take advantage of what your opponent has used in Game 1, and then pick your Evo to use in Game 2. And that's exactly what Igor did here. The value that he got on that one push against the Princess, the Evoed Barbs, and the Mighty Miner, and the Cannon Cart was stupid.
And there you go, some reflection to get on the Princess and the tower on the left-hand lane. 451 the mark in the left-hand side as the Princess of Morten tries to make some room for the Evo Barbs, but the reality is the Evo Barbs not going to do a whole lot on offense, where they are primarily defensive. Hog takes the left-hand tower, and we are going to game number 3.
And, you know, man, this is what this, again, like, I do wish Mo was here so that I could see if he could stack up the same way that he always does with Evolutions, because look at how one-sided both of those matches were with the respective Evos, right? Firecracker in game 1, Morten, he doesn't dominate, but he's in strong control the whole time. Barbs, not very effective from Igor. Flip-flop that in game 2, Igor truly in control all of game 2, and Morten, again, couldn't really find a great place for those barbs. Now, do I think Evo barbs are good? Absolutely, but at least in this first set, Firecracker has been the dominant force.
Yeah, and it's, you know, Firecracker and the Royal Giant, both of them are so devastating, and they can quickly change a game in a way that the other 3 Evos can't. They don't turn a game on its head that explosively. And when you're making a pre-made duel set, you're trying to account for 2 game-changing cards at the same time, which is, it's hard enough to do it for 1. Doing it for 2 is a really tall task, and we saw Morten run into that problem there, and now we see him going, and most likely, there we go, Royal Giant here in game 3 for both players.
Now, I will say, if you get a miner in behind that Goblin that shoots out of that Mortar, Rich, that will turn a game around, and we should be talking a lot more about the Evo'd Mortar. I mean, come on.
Yes, of course.
It's the best card in the game, right? I mean, why wouldn't we be talking? So Evo'd RGs both directions. Kind of a surprise here, just a little bit, I guess, in the sense that Evo RG was saved for game 3, but I think also because of what you just mentioned, man, in the sense of like Evo RG being able to turn a game on a dime, I do think maybe you save that most powerful, like I think Firecracker needs to be played in one of your first 2 games, and then you got to have RG in probably your third, right? If you need it and you haven't used it yet, it just feels like you have to play this card.
And here goes Morten pulling the extra powerful RG into the middle so he can get some really good damage from both towers. Still, he takes a big chunk as well. We'll see what Morten does when it's his turn to get on offense.
Yeah, I mean, we got basically a mirror matchup here. Very small change between the Lumberjack and the Royal Ghost, and I think that Lumberjack is actually going to put in more work. The other thing that I love, every time it happens, I'm always like slightly annoyed, but then I love that the change happened, was that Rage does damage. It feels like one of the most like duh changes ever, and I absolutely love it.
So here we go, classic RG to the left-hand side for Igor, Evo'd RG on the right-hand side. And you're gonna see 2 things that Igor's doing here to defend against that classic RG. One is attack it from the sky, right? Attack it from distance, from the sky, so that that ability when the Evo RG shoots to knock back and do damage doesn't get involved. Number 2, and this is why you're seeing them try to use the Electro Spirit for it. You can use Ice Spirit, Electro Spirit, any stuns, so that you can get a couple of shots off, get the DPS in without it actually hitting. That's actually huge as well. So you see a little bit of damage done here. Still, RG gets 3 shots.
Lightning, that's huge.
Wow.
That's
GG.
gonna do it.
And you see Igor just snapping it up.
He's got the snaps going. And I'd say the other thing that I noticed Igor doing really well, Rich, the last thing to add on to your little bit of a tutorial on how to defend against that Evo'd RG is get on top of it early with those small bait units. If you have skellies, get them down instantaneously. Goblins down instantaneously, because the RG only drops that AoE damage when it shoots. So if it's not in range of your tower, get that damage in early on. I mean, this is kind of fun, right? When's the last time we get to talk to you about how to defend a card? Well, there we go. So, Rich, Igor, looking pretty dang good. All of us wrong in our first pick of the day, which means at least for all of us, we're still even. And another shout out to our producers here telling that this is Morten's first loss with Evo'd RG, obviously in CRL monthly finals, but mainly what we're talking about is the qualifiers.
Yeah, I mean, he's playing against a different caliber of player today, obviously, in a former world champion, former 3rd in the world in Igor. Of course, also one of the all-time greatest, if not the greatest all-time ladder player in the history of the game. Yeah. So it's a different level of competition you're playing against. I'm really curious about that matchup, though, because historically, Lumberjack is known to shred Royal Giants. And this came down to, hey, Firecracker won game 1, Firecracker won game 2, and Morten got kind of behind early and just couldn't get the DPS. And look at that last shot there from that RG. Right? And so historically, Lumberjack kind of shreds the Royal Giant, but you're seeing the effect of that extra damage there. And I'm wondering, you know, if they play that same matchup 100 times, how many times does that go to Morten? How many times does that go to Igor with the slight variation in decks?
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to hear the breakdown there from, maybe AC when he comes back, just to hear what his thoughts on it. And then the other thing is Morten's not gone. He's not. He's going to go down to the lower bracket. His life will be on the line today in our final couple matches of the day. We'll see who his opponent's going to be, obviously, as we work through. But talking about our decks, this is going to be the story of a lot of the day, is where did the Evos come out and how strong were they? Game number 1 goes to Morten. Probably the strongest deck in the game right now. The only thing that you're seeing differently is that the Mighty Miner, as you said, Rich, is probably used somewhere else. And there we see it. Game number 2 comes out with a bait deck, Evoed Barbs. I don't really know how I feel about this deck, but I think that the thing that you really have to focus on more is that the deck on the left-hand side of the screen is one of the strongest in the game, period. I mean, the only change there, again, is, what's that tank card going to be? And then as we look at game number 3, yeah, man, I'd love to see the breakdown. I'd love to see the analytics of LJ versus Royal Ghost, right? Lumberjack versus Royal Ghost in this basic mirror matchup. Fireball versus Lightning. Igor ends up coming out on top with the Fireball, or excuse me, with the Lightning to close things out. A lot of fun stuff in our first match. I mean, I think this is exactly what we expected. Evo Firecracker, Evo Barbs, Evo RG. Who knows if we'll see Evo Skeletons at all today? Like I said, there is that weird 2.6 Evo Skeletons deck out there, but seeing 2.6 at this level is always a surprise. But I do want to see some Evo Mortar. AC, I'm going to toss it to you in just a second after we take a look here at our bracket to catch where Morten's going to be and obviously where Igor is going to be moving forward to, or maybe not. So there we go. Igor, moving on. He's going to play the winner of Ruben and Arden Toas. So either way, that's going to be a super fun one. We're going to get either Igor or Ruben or Igor and Arden. So we're all going to be happy there. And then Morten down at the bottom of your screen, going to just hang out till the end of the day. He's going to be our 5th matchup to see who he's going to face off in the next match's loser. AC, what are your thoughts on that first set, man?
Well, I saw a lot of great things with Igor and a few kind of minor missteps on his end. And so the weird part, the entire time that I was watching, I was thinking, wow, if I didn't know who Igor was, I would think he's, one of the greatest players in the world when it comes to macro. But he did make a few micro mistakes. He was kind of cycling incorrectly at times. There was, at one point, there was a Phoenix coming down the lane and he placed the Skellies too high, so the tower ended up not locking on. But the macro overall in that set was gorgeous. There were so many things he did right. And actually, you were talking about it, the Lumberjack versus the Ghost, the Lumberjack historically shredding the RG. Actually, that was Rich, not you, Andrew. And really, the Lumberjack should have the matchup in that. But it comes down to Igor's macro play. Oh, if you're going to do RG in the back, well, I can do it at the bridge. You don't have the amount of elixir that you need to defend it. So I was very impressed with his game number 3 specifically.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's great to hear you break it down because you know that matchup better than me. And yeah, Rich, you talked about it.
Yeah, that was a fascinating one. And, I think Josh hit the nail on the head there with Evo, RG in the back versus RG at the bridge. One of them gets to the tower a whole lot faster when you just spent 6 elixir. I was also a little curious about the first matchup, but we got to go on to our next one because it's just banger after banger. We're going to find out right now who's going to face Igor in the next round. Will it be last year's world finalist, contender for Rookie of the Year last year in Arden Toas, or the 2020 man who broke his back getting his team a world champion, Ruben, on the other side? And I'm excited for this one. Ruben, of course, I think that when he was at his best, if you want to talk about the players who had the best years ever, I would put Ruben's 2019 into 2020 as one of the all-time best years in Clash Royale. And Josh, I know you played against Ruben a whole lot. Thoughts on the former world champion?
Well, actually, my final 1v1 match in competitive history was against Ruben, and that was my worst loss of my career, probably. The way he just dominates, it's not even his side of the map or your side of the map. It's just, it's plain and simple. The way he dominates the bridge is insane. For some reason, he'll spend 8 elixir, you'll spend 10 elixir, and it's a mirror match, and he'll still win the bridge battles every time. There's something about just he's so deliberate with every single card that gets played.
I mean, he literally just did it in that video right there. That bridge battle was absolutely nuts. Dude, what a throwback. This is like watching back when they didn't have the 3-point line. Level 9 in competitive, the old layout. It like brings me all the feels seeing this old nostalgic CRL gameplay. And while everything has changed in terms of the years and who's in the top of the game, Ruben is still in that same room ready to dominate.
Well, I'm going to sign off here, folks, and I just want to say that in the moment the Who's Decorated Their Room Better battle goes to Ruben, let's see how this gameplay plays out as well.
Hey, so you feeling any throwbacks here with that old the old layout and the old video, the old level 9s?
Yeah, it's so refreshing getting to see what used to happen, and it's cool because, like, I mean, even though I love champions getting introduced, and especially with Evos getting introduced as well, but it's always nice to just see that OG gameplay where you just kind of sit back and you kind of just remember those games, but you want to just see them again.
Yeah, it's what got us all here. So here we go, Ruben top of your screen, Arden at the bottom, and you know, this is definitely a fun matchup. We talked about it a little bit. Arden known for his pretty aggressive, predictive gameplay. Ruben known for slow, methodical pile-ups at the end where you're just wondering how on earth did he just change and flip the script like that as quickly as he just did. Ruben, though, going pretty aggressive right now. Those wall breakers at the bridge should get one connection. No, wow. A perfect snowball. And then that last guard picking up its extra paycheck there with that one stab.
I mean, such a perfect snowball that you can actually just learn from that. I was thinking that, oh, you know, you have to push it back, but now I know for future reference that you can just snowball it to the side, basically, and the guards are still going to get there. So Arden Toa's teaching the class how certain interactions work.
And I love the patience from him there, too. You saw both of them go, like, kind of flinch as it happened. Arden obviously not wanting it to connect, Ruben wanting the opposite, and both of them kind of going, all right, so that's how that works out. I like that there was not an overspend there from Arden, maybe showing a little bit more calm.
And right there, Arden Toa's barely getting it off, but he does activate the ability with the Mighty Miner, so it takes out the Firecracker. And this is a Firecracker bridge that connects to the tower, so that's 300 HP. And then he also gets to get aggressive right there. So just a great interaction from Ruben. There's something about this quick cycle miner deck where you're getting Firecrackers on the board, and that's what you want to see in a Firecracker deck.
Well, it just stays on the offense the entire time. I mean, even there, wow. I mean, wow. That wall breaker connects, Fire Spirit comes down, the splash damage kills the Musketeer. Like, this is so hyper aggressive. You're always dealing with either the wall breakers, or then you have to deal with the Firecracker, then you have to deal with the Evo'd Firecracker. Well, what about the Minor Bats push? So I actually really love this deck, and Arden is having a hard time keeping up with Ruben, but now Ruben's gonna take a good amount of damage. Hog tanking for the Goblin as that Mortar gets another shot in, and we're even. We're even, just like that. Arden takes the lead. Evo'd Mortar, best card in the game.
I mean, Ruben just did not defend enough. There was an entire mortar on the board, and so now it comes down to, can you defend this Firecracker? Firecracker goes out in front, but you still might need to snowball, and that's what Arden Toas does. 788 to 714, and is Arden gonna go with just the Hog Earthquake?
He gets the shot.
Oh,
that's a big shot. EQ comes in, Miner plus Bats, Firecracker at the bridge. Nothing there to stop the Firecracker, so it gets no splash. Good placement there. One Bat comes in. Mortar trying to get on top of the tower.
I mean, Arden Toas was so worried about the Firecracker that he misses one of the Bats, and right now he has to get ultra aggressive. That's the game plan that he knows and loves.
Wow.
It's the Hog shot, 146, and Ruben has no big spell, so if Arden Toas defends this, he wins.
Well, and Ruben didn't... I feel like he just kind of watched that Hog shot connect to his tower. There we go, snowball's in. Miner shot is in, EQ, 9... Oh my goodness, what a game.
Oh my, Arden Toa's down 1,000 HP. All of a sudden we look away and Ruben lets a mortar go. You were talking about how deadly the mortar is. Well, when you don't defend it, it gets even crazier.
I gotta say, when I freaked out and said Evo Mortar best card in the game, I got a very little reaction out of you, and I'm pretty disappointed. So I'm gonna have to try that again when Rich is on. Nope. Moments passed. Moments passed.
Because still my current reaction is that I'm not sure if I can agree with it.
I gotta tell you, man, I'm really shocked at Ruben's defenses in the first one, obviously, with that mortar connecting, like massive. You let the Evo mortar connect, couple shots, Goblin's just hanging out. Then you let the Hog Rider come in, another Evo mortar shot comes in, Hog tanking for the Goblin. Like, it didn't really make a lot of sense. But then the other one where he just lets the Hog hit, I don't know if he didn't have the elixir or if he was just like praying to the Clash Royale gods. But I don't know, man. Those two drop defenses were uncharacteristic.
Yeah, and I expect that Ruben is going to clean that up for the rest of the set, and I certainly hope he will. So Ruben, he's going to be running the Skeleton King Graveyard, Inferno Dragon at the bridge, takes out most of the Skeleton King, but not all the way, and Arden Toa's using Skeleton King Graveyard Tombstone. So, yeah, actually, is this Graveyard with Fireball from Arden Toa's?
I'm not sure, but what I am sure about is
wow.
Ruben is not playing like Ruben. He's actually playing like Arden, and Arden is playing like you're supposed to. I don't really understand why, if you look at the first 4 cards played by Ruben, it's a Skeleton King, a Poison, and a Graveyard, and a Skeleton King ability was used in there. Like, that's just too much elixir to be spent in single when you're playing Graveyard, man.
Yeah, it absolutely is, and I would like to correct myself. I'm fairly certain this is going to be RG from Arden Toa's, and then Ruben on the opposite end. We're seeing the Evoed Barbs, and while they are good, I mean, you have to play very careful with these kind of decks from Ruben's end, because you can't go down in HP. You have the Inferno Dragon for defense, you have the Evoed Barbs for defense, and so you need to make it last. You need to have this game be 4+ minutes. Otherwise, Arden Toa's, especially with his aggression, he's going to be taking out the tower way too early before you can even get a singular push in.
And I think Arden pretty happy about that interaction right there. He just saw the poison get used by Ruben, and then he kind of like sat back and was like, all right, here we go. So I think what he's thinking is, no matter what, my Mother Witch is safe. And that means that your offense from the Skeleton King and your offense from the Graveyard don't exist for one cycle. So maybe that's what that nod was, and there you go. Gets all the way back around, and now Mother Witch gets taken off the board. Second Mother Witch comes down, and Arden's just going to try to keep beating that cycle and keep Mother Witches on the board, and I really like that play. I mean, he doesn't need to get any damage for the rest of this game.
Yeah, Inferno Dragon over the middle, going to be able to snipe the Mother Witch and the Fisherman as well. So Inferno Dragon getting a ton of value, and Ruben finally able to cross the bridge and do just a little bit of something. But it's really going to require a very strong defense. And I don't know, even with the Evoed Barbs, even with the Inferno Dragon, I think basically Arden Toa's, as soon as he gets a push, he wins.
Yeah, and we'll see if that's going to happen right here. Fireball comes down on top of those Evoed Barbs. Really unfortunate timing there for Arden to drop his Evoed RG right into preset Evoed Barbs. I don't know if it's going to be enough to turn the game around, but this is the only bright spot for Ruben for him to take this with the massive deficit.
That's right, tower down to 1537. A couple Zappies on the board, and Skeleton King is going to be fine. Luckily, one of the Zappies stays alive, so Arden Toa is going to get a baby counter push going, especially with the Fireball helping out. And tower all the way down to 386. It has now lasted 4 minutes, but Ruben down 1200 HP.
And Ruben now needing to turn up the heat, but Mother Witch in the back is going to cause a lot of problems. Piggy's piling up, arrows plus poison come in here, so nice damage for Ruben. And all of this comes back to, all of this, Ruben, you ruining me being predictions champion, all comes down to that very aggressive early send. And I get it, right? He poisoned up high because there was a Mother Witch on top of the tombstone, so you got to use the poison. I just don't know if I love that Graveyard early on. Again, I know Mother Witch is out of cycle, so you go Graveyard. It just felt too aggressive. But here we go. 17 seconds remaining, 500 damage separating the two. Could things turn around? Maybe. We need a miracle.
Yeah, with 10 seconds left, finally getting the first Evoed RG. It's the second one on the board, but the first Evoed RG, it's going to get one shot, plus the pushback, plus the Fireball. Arden Toa is going 2-0 on the day. And clean sweep right there. Puts me and Rich on the board.
You know, I think it's pretty selfish of you to make the whole predictions thing about you guys. We should really be talking about the players in moments like this, AC.
Yeah. Arden Toa's, there we go. What a set from him right there. I mean, we talked about it, it's the aggression, but really it came down to, I mean, when you're aggressive all the time, you know how to defend aggression yourself. And I mean, game 2, it was just make one solid defense, and the rest is history.
Yeah. Congrats to you and Rich on the prediction there, and I love it. You know, honestly, I don't like being wrong, but I'm okay to be wrong when it was played like this. Arden played an incredible set there, and a lot of it was on the back of Ruben just not playing the way that we expect Ruben to play. I mean, this is just the end of game number 1, and you can see the reaction from Ruben, and it's because he threw I don't even know what the lead was. It was like a 2,000 HP lead. He just tosses it away. One Evo mortar, Hog Rider comes in, all of a sudden we're even, and then Arden is kind of able to hold on until we close things out. Then in this game, we just see a really, really aggressive Ruben again. And I think when you play Clash like a binary thing, like if this, then this, you're not always going to win, right? Now, a lot of times learning matchups, that's one of the things you have to rely on. And that's part of like knowing the game. It's like, well, if this is out of cycle, you have to be aggressive. But I think when you're at this level, being that aggressive, playing Clash like in a binary system like that doesn't really work. Just because Mother Witch is out of cycle doesn't mean you need to graveyard in the first 20 seconds of the game.
Yeah, actually, I really like that thought process because I think we saw it in game 1. Right there, Ruben had the massive lead. Oh, I have a massive lead? Well, I can go in because he went mortar on the opposite lane. He can't defend it. But really, I mean, Arden Toas does have the quick cycle. He has the snowball, plus the guards, plus the fire spirit, so he can defend it. And because he has that thought process that you're talking about, he's not really thinking deeper into it, and so it allowed for one last defensive stop and one last offensive push. So I actually really like that point. And game number 2, I mean, Hog Mortar is good, but game 2, there we go. We have the RG Skeleton King, but really, it was just a Skeleton King Overwhelm deck. The RG actually meant nothing in that matchup.
Yeah, I mean, you know, really, it was the Zappies at the bridge with the bar barrel on top of that tombstone. It was all about piggybacking on the overspend from Ruben. That's all it came down to. Then you get that massive damage lead, and you just kind of hold on to it for the rest of the game. You know, Ruben was able to even things up, but that also is a big part of Arden. He had a really badly timed Evo to RG, and then also he never felt the need to be aggressive. He never felt the need to get back on offense until the very end there, which is exactly what he did to steal the game. So I love to see it. I love the gameplay there from Arden. I would love to see Ruben kind of reset, maybe watch the other competitors and go, I need to slow down just a little bit. I need to go find my old Ruben footing. Rich, I know that we got to check in on the leaderboard in a second, but how'd you feel about that match? I'm excited to hear what you got cooking.
It was really interesting seeing some smart things that Arden Toas did, and one of the big ones, and we talked about how dangerous she is, it was handling the firecracker rather than the miner early on in that first match. So it's nice seeing some maturity to begin to build in Arden Toas, and that speaks a lot for his opportunities throughout this weekend as we go into our bracket. And then we're going to take a look at the points leaderboard to get some understanding of the stakes beyond just the golden ticket. And here we go. We get some fascinating ones. And this is the match that you wanted to see, Josh, Igor versus Arden in the upper semis, or I think that was you who said that one, Igor versus Arden. It might have been Andrew. It's been a minute. And then on the bottom, we get a rematch of the final game of our 2020 World Finals, an elimination match between Morten and Ruben. Andrew, which one of those is more exciting?
I don't know. Honestly, I really don't. I mean, I think maybe based off of both of these guys maybe feeling the heat a little bit, wondering if they're going to be at World Finals, I think it's match number 5. I think it's Morten Ruben for me.
Josh?
I mean, I just think it has to be Morten and Ruben. That's just always going to be the match that you have to look at.
Well, let's take a look at the point leaderboard as we talk about the match we just saw and the upcoming matches, because again, the top 7 players at the end of our season for the points leaderboard, not counting golden ticket winners, will also get burst to World Finals. And that gives some context to the match that we just saw. Coming into the weekend, Arden Toas is 18th on the leaderboard to Ruben's 7th. So getting a win and taking those points away from Ruben, giving them to himself, is a huge push for Arden to try to get into that contention for World Finals, minus a golden ticket. And then as we transition to our next couple of matches here, Andrew and Josh, next up, we're going to have Faust against Dark Angel. Faust has almost secured a World Finals berth, currently second on the leaderboard, 325 points. Dark Angel has jumped up 25 spots from last season into 38th position, and he's another guy who needs to get points to try to secure that trip to Worlds.
Yeah, it's good to see that name back in the mix, Dark Angel. I feel like it's been a while since I've seen him put in work. It feels like he had a really strong, promising future, and that he kind of just I don't want to say fell by the wayside, but who knows? Maybe life got in the way, maybe competition got in the way, but these two have met before. It was actually in April. They played in our Swiss bracket phase in round 3, and it was Dark Angel who took the set 2-1, but that's the only history we have on these two in CRL. Faust, on the other hand of it, man, I mean, he's I think, Rich, you talked about him being Rookie of the Year. I talked about him being my, I think, my dark horse to win a golden ticket, so I guess I'm kind of like rooting for him here. This should be a super fun one, and the whole points conversation is really interesting because we just saw with Arden and Ruben how quickly things can turn, and obviously with Morten in first place, he's not wanting to just fall out in his first 2 matches.
Yeah, that's super, super important. You see Faust pretty serious here. We haven't seen kind of this level of seriousness on Faust's face, and it's interesting because of all the players that we have here, Josh, it does feel like Faust is one of the few who probably has already secured a berth to World Finals. Do you think he's still feeling the pressure right now?
Well, I mean, I think you have to look at his previous performances when it comes to these monthly finals, because he's struggled a lot. He could look into the future in 2 months and say, oh, you know, I know for a fact I'm gonna secure a golden ticket, and I don't think it would change his emotions today. I think he really needs to look at this monthly finals as I think he needs to justify that he really is one of these top 10, top 5, top 3 players in the world, and I think he needs this monthly finals.
Well, we'll catch up with Andrew in a little bit as we jump into this match between Faust and Dark Angel. And, you know, talking about Dark Angel overall, of course, has some CRL experience, part of Team Queso back in CRL West 2019. But this is really the closest he's come to recapturing that top tier. And we'll see what he does against Faust. And right out the gate, we're seeing the other variation of this drill deck. Josh, this is the variation that I was playing on ladder most of this season. The Skeletons, I believe, will be the choice here. Could go Goblins, does go Skeletons. So the Mighty Miner version. Thoughts on the Mighty Miner version of this deck versus that synergy with Golden Knight?
Yeah, I mean, the synergy with Golden Knight is just so spectacular because, I mean, you have the Tornado, Golden Knight, and Firecracker. And so when you have those 3 cards all working together, synergizing to perfection, I think that's just really valuable. I think you need that double win condition that isn't the drill. And right there, Dark Angel with the reactive freeze, otherwise Firecracker is going to put in too much work, but I think it's still going to put in too much work.
I mean, that is completely insane. And look, it's going to be fine in the long run. He's going to take some chip damage here. I mean, maybe not. He has to... Faust can still defend this. Getting that freeze and not getting the Evo Firecracker off the board is absolutely bananas. And here I go eating my words as that Evo Firecracker continues to chew up HP and chew up that elixir from Dark Angel.
I mean, that is probably 10, 12, 13, 14 worth of elixir on the board that was taken out from Faust's Firecracker. I mean, that is so much damage, and it puts him straight away into the lead, and I actually love this deck choice from Faust in game number 1, because here's the thing. If you know that you can go quick cycle and your opponent might not be up to date with the micro plays and might struggle a little bit, these quick cycle Firecracker decks are gonna make it's gonna force them into 1,000 decisions. And when you have to make more decisions, you will make more mistakes.
And good damage in from the graveyard play of Dark Angel, taking the lead back 1772 to still over 2200 HP on both lanes right now for his opponent. So we'll see what Faust has in store. And of course, an evolved Firecracker on the board will do a ton of damage, play a ton of defense, and force out a ton of elixir.
I mean, the evolved Firecracker is still full health, so arrows won't be able to do anything to it. And both of the Firecrackers are going to go to the right side, so he gets aggressive on the left. He doesn't want to give too much arrows value, and he's still going to keep that Firecracker alive because of the Tombstone over the middle. I mean, this is, I've never seen Firecrackers get this much value in a competitive match.
But still, look at this. Dark Angel with the lead, and the Skeleton King doing a good job of shutting down the drills and not able to get a lot of offensive presence out of these Evo Firecrackers is Faust. So this is a really interesting situation where it's looking more and more like it's going to be a win for Dark Angel in game one.
Yeah, Dark Angel's aggression has, I mean, for some reason, it just doesn't matter that these Firecrackers are on the board because his offensive attacks are getting so much value every time. We see a nice nado from Faust, but I think, oh my goodness, with the Firecrackers' help, it gets down to 154, almost steals away that game.
And wow, the freeze does its job. One skeleton sneaks in, and that might have been close, but you wouldn't be able to tell from the face of Dark Angel.
Oh my. How are you not reacting to that? You see your tower at 1200 HP, you see your opponent's tower at 100. I can close my eyes and play any 8 cards, and it's gonna work out. I'm gonna win. But no, Faust comes from behind almost, but Dark Angel just holds on. It's insane. I mean, one of my favorite interactions to watch and never to play against is the Firecracker shooting an opposing building, but from the opposite lane. But then the Evo'd Firecracker's shot just poisons the opposing tower as well. It is crazy the range that gets displayed.
So now it's RG versus RG, this time Lumberjack on both sides. Royal Giant gets a couple of shots here to open up for Dark Angel. And now it's Faust's turn to reply.
2 shots from both RGs. The, slightly different interactions shown. And there we go. Fisherman to defend the RG plus the help of the Goblins will be able to clean it up not even nicely. This RG is going to get insane value.
And that is a ton of damage very, very early in this game. And you see Faust just go, yep, yeah, that's the thing. And man, Evo's going to Evo.
I love how Dark Angel cycled so quickly, and I mean, Faust deck is all right because, I mean, the Lumberjack is always going to put in work, but this quick cycle for Dark Angel just makes the matchup so different because he can go Skeletons plus E-Spirit, and his opponent can only do Goblins and E-Spirit. And when you start off with RG, it just makes it that much easier to put your opponent in a terrible spot.
And Evo RG is slowed down dramatically, damaged a ton, but how much can it do for Faust now? And now with the Fisherman supporting, 1 HP RG suddenly puts this right back in contention.
Yeah, Faust, a great counterattack right there. Will the Fisherman, the Fisherman does help out a lot, but the Lumberjack actually locks onto the Phoenix Egg. So Dark Angel's Lumberjack, I mean, crazy, absolutely knows his priorities. And all of a sudden, he's going to take that tower while defending.
And 197, that's an inside spell range. Although, maybe not quite for the spell that Dark Angel's carrying. Looks like he's on Fireball, and this could be a problem. Faust might take this right back. And here we go.
Yeah, and
with 25 seconds left, Faust in the lead.
Yeah, and I mean, if he's running Fireball, he has to get really... I mean, Faust is doing a great job with going aggressive over the middle. That's exactly what we need to see. And now the RG is going to be able to put in a ton of work, down to 824, rage of 1200, and it's still not done.
That is, the RG in the pocket when you don't have a building is absolutely insane with that evolution. And here we go. Now it's the opposite opportunity, but a lot more DPS on the board here. This will not be quite as impactful. Still going to do a ton of damage as it does go down. Lead heavily in favor of Faust.
Cleans everything up fairly nicely. Fisherman, or RG in the middle, going to be able to get the tower down fairly low, but not going to be low enough. Faust is going to be able to play one more RG. I'd like to see, okay, and I actually love that Faust goes over the middle, or over the bridge, instead of the pocket. Why do I love that? Because if he goes in the pocket and Dark Angel predicts with the Fisherman just played all the way on the right side of the arena, he would have had a chance to defend. He could have pulled it away from the tower and been able to counterattack. So great adjustment from Faust to go directly over the bridge right there at the end.
So here we go. Game number 3. RG's out. Firecracker already used by Faust. Let's see if Dark Angel is going that direction.
Okay, and so I saw Dark Angel use this in the round of 32. It's the quick cycle. I believe Ruben already played it today, but it's going to be bats, firecracker, goblins, and I believe bomb tower as well. And it just cycles so fast. And Faust, I mean, depending on his spells, he could really struggle if he doesn't have the right responses to these. I mean, just the quickest cycle I've ever seen in a deck.
But big lava loon play, and we're not seeing a building out of Dark Angel here, so this is going to be probably tower down here on the left-hand side. And boom, there you go. Faust with a huge early lead. Damage to the right-hand lane, important. But Josh, what's the way to battle back here for Dark Angel? Is it just try to find a way to get Evo Firecracker, but then you're in a crosswise two-tower game?
Yeah, I think it's certainly possible, but I've been talking to a couple people, and a lot of people love the idea of Lava Hound. And, you know, I'm seeing a lot of players start to practice it, and I've heard that a lot of players are going to start practicing it because it has a lot of decent matchups. The Evoed Barbs, plus the Inferno Dragon, and just the aggression with the Lava and Balloon. It's hard to stop, and Dark Angel, he really just does not have the right responses. As quickly as his deck will cycle, Faust should be able to defend or just attack. One of those will always be good every possession by each player.
Wall breakers will connect for some good damage on the left-hand side. 857, what Dark Angel has to get off the right-hand lane to stay in here on game number 3. Remember, it's not just the golden ticket hopeful that is at stake here for Dark Angel. He really needs to start stacking up points to keep himself in contention on that leaderboard as well.
Faust getting aggressive, and that's exactly what you need to do because you can't just defend out in this game. You need to continue to get aggressive. Miner on top of the Firecracker eventually, once it wakes up, Balloon over the middle. As much as, I mean, Dark Angel, he started off so strong, but this game, it was all Faust all the way, and it comes down to, I mean, this is how you play Lava. You just get aggressive, you use your spells when you can, and I mean, you try and win before the Evoed Firecracker becomes a problem.
And there you go. Faust with a very, very nice win here to open up his July campaign in our monthly final. Add more to that point total. This will, at least for the moment, we'll see how he and Morten shake out for the rest of this weekend. For the moment, puts him at #1 on our points leaderboard for qualifying for Worlds, and one very important step closer to a trip for that championship. Josh looked shaky early on in this matchup, but as you said, really corrected towards the end, and Faust played perfect gameplay here at the end.
I mean, there's something about Lava that scares off a lot of these players, and I don't know if it's because they don't really believe in it or they don't have enough practice and don't really want to practice, but Faust, I mean, we know how good he is with Loon and, you know, control decks in general, but it was just so impressive to see him in that game. He did everything right, and really all that is getting aggressive early on, because once the Evoed Firecrackers become a problem, it's just too much. It's going to overwhelm so much. I was really impressed by his game 3, and just the fact that he went in trying to win the game right away.
And definitely got the aggression early on. And this is the Royal Giant game where we saw how nasty the Evo RG can be, especially in the pocket. And aggression really was the name of the game for Faust in this one in games 2 and game 3. And of course, as you mentioned, that big Lava Loon push to kick things off. Dark Angel doing what he can, but you know, the bat's not able to do much when you have the zap involved as well. And this really felt like just a downhill run for Faust in game number 3, Josh.
Yeah, oh my. I mean, even as I'm looking at the replays, I'm again reminded that Faust made a great play at the end of game 2. So really, end of game 2, he goes RG over the bridge. And yes, I think he would have won regardless, but you still want to be making the best plays that you can. And I mean, in every single moment. And then game 3, obviously, just the macro of that. So overall, I mean, I'm fairly certain Faust does not have a set win once he makes the monthly finals. This is his third monthly finals, and he finished 8th the first 2 monthly finals. So he has to be feeling so good that he can just get it off his shoulders. He got his set win, and now he can actually just start playing his game.
And after, of course, losing game number 1 with Firecracker, had to feel a little bit concerned about that one. But then, of course, as we saw, game number 2, the RG essentially mirror match, very close, goes his way. And then on to game number 3, as we just saw a whole lot. Really great work from there. And, you talk about, there's a kind of a short list of players, Josh, who, and I think we're going to bring Andrew back on in a second, who are top tier world class players who've never made world finals. You have players like Adriel, you have Greco, and you have Faust. And I'm curious where you guys put Faust. And Andrew, I'll go to you. Where do you put Faust in the list of players who are top tier world class players, but who've never made world finals? Do you put him as your number 1? Who do you think might be ahead of him in that conversation?
That's a really tough question to answer, I think, off the top of my head. I would definitely say he's probably in my top 10. For some reason, I can't really put him in my top 3. I feel like there's people like, Ian, for instance, is a guy that really pops in my head. And, I don't know if Riley is there yet, but he's definitely a person that I think if, like, in a few years he's not at that level, I'd be very, very shocked. But I think Faust is getting there. And I think that a win like what he just got over Dark Angel is exactly the type of win that he needs to get. And this is no slight on Dark Angel, but I think had he lost to Dark Angel, it would have really kind of hindered where he is in the public's eye, or at least in my eye.
Sure. Josh, same thought for you. Where do you put Faust on the list of players who've never made world finals? And especially now that it looks like it's going to be almost impossible to stop him from making world finals.
Yeah, I don't know exactly. I mean, same thing as Andrew, but I would have to say it's high. I would say at least top 5, maybe top 3. I mean, it could be top 1. After today, I feel a lot more confident in him overall. Really, I was just waiting for that set win. I was waiting to be impressed. And right there, I really was. It felt like he was able to collect himself in the moment. And we love when players can do that. I'm now an excited fan of Faust.
And the battle back there was absolutely critical. And that does take Faust one very important step closer. We, of course, know how much easier your road to a golden ticket is when you stay on that upper bracket. And Andrew, now at this point, he's just 3 wins away from or 2 wins away, 3 wins away from a golden ticket, as opposed to having to battle through that lower bracket. And he probably feels pretty excited about either matching up against his countryman in Sosa or against one of our early golden ticket winners from 2021 in Top.
Yeah, I mean, that bottom bracket doesn't look super fun right now either. I think staying in that upper bracket with the extra life is a really, really important thing. And when you look at who he might get in his second round up in the upper bracket, Ta and Sosa, this is a matchup where you're kind of, I think you're kind of happy that you're in the lower bracket. Ta and Sosa are 2 players that are still very much on their way up. You talk about that conversation of players of, who should be, or who are your top players that haven't made world final yet. These are 2 players that could be in that conversation relatively soon. Ta with a little bit more experience at the highest level of CRL, but Sosa is a name that we've all talked about a lot over the last couple of years. And in 2023, they're both doing pretty well, but it's actually Sosa who is really high up on the leaderboards. I mean, we've shown it a couple times today. I think he's in 7th place, which is pretty big. And we saw him get 3rd place in our 3rd monthly final this year, which is a big deal. I mean, getting in the top 3 of a monthly final is absolutely nuts. And honestly, when you get in the top 3 in most of our monthly finals, you are only really 1 game away from that golden ticket. So I think that's a really interesting thing to hold on to. And then Ta, he's kind of like that one-hit wonder, right? He popped up, he won that monthly final, we talked about him a lot, and then basically since then he's been really, really quiet. And that was 2 years ago. Since then he's been up and down, and we saw him in 16th place earlier this year. So I think this is really a coin toss of a match.
Well, Andrew, you talk about that. You're right. Sosa is 7th place on the overall leaderboard when you include golden tickets. But when you take the golden tickets out, he's in 3rd. He's right up there, and a win over Ta here, again, he's already in very good position. A win over Ta here, adding those points. For those top 3 guys right now, Morten, Faust, and Sosa, every win this weekend is insurance for them. Whereas Ta won a monthly final before the golden ticket era, which he has to be a little bit salty about that in retrospect. he's in that chase. 21st on the list when you take out the golden ticket winners. So if he can start taking points off away from Sosa and towards himself, this is a big chance for Ta to make a push upwards and hopefully contend for those top 7 spots.
Yeah, definitely frustrating to win a monthly final back before the golden ticket era. You know, Lucas X Gamer talking about that, the greatest ever back-to-back monthly finals winner without a coach, as he likes to remind us all of on Twitter regularly. So big shout out to both of these guys. And Ta looks like having to go off camera for the moment, and Sosa going to join him. So here we go. We got no cams, but we got a good game going. Going to look like it's RG out in both directions. And I really love seeing Monk showing up more. We started seeing Monk show up more when we were doing Royale Masters just a couple weeks ago. Once Evos were in the game, Monk is a great way to counter that Evo to Firecracker, but we also learned that Monk does not fully counter an Evo to Firecracker, so be careful with that.
Yeah, the world is crazy. The world is crazy right now. And
I mean, the fact that a 5 elixir champion cannot stop it with its ability is crazy to me, man.
Well, we'll see how long that remains, or if that's just for the time being. I know that there are people who'd be excited to see Evo Firecracker be, you know, a little bit less frightening, but for now, it's the world that we live in, and Monk still very powerful, and of course Monk a big part of RG decks for quite a while. He wants to hit Mark on the left-hand side with under a minute left to play, and now we see Sosa push RG in the opposite lane.
Yeah, pretty inopportune Fisherman there, but actually ends up being great with that Lightning coupled with the Goblins. I mean, honestly, it could have even been called a predictive Fisherman because that's where you're going to pull the RG anyway. So I like what we just saw there out of Ta. And yeah, I mean, look, man, I'm happy to use... Just let me keep getting those ladder wins, and I don't care what you do with these Evo cards.
And there you go, the RG down. And, you know, one of the things to think about with these Evos, Andrew, is that, and the Goblins getting good value, but still damage in. One thing about these Evos, Andrew, is it really changes, I think, how you feel about frequency of playing your evolved card, right? How many players are playing... I haven't seen the numbers on it, but are players playing 1 or 2 extra Royal Giants a game because they are trying to get to their Evoed Royal Giant? Same thing with
100%, 150%. Yeah, there's not. I don't think there's not even a question around it. You're seeing a lot more aggressive RGs in single elixir, just so that you can get to that second RG in single, or that second RG as soon as you get to double, because it's so devastating in single elixir if you can get an Evoed RG down and your opponent is even down 1 elixir. So I think your point is 100% yes. People are absolutely trying to abuse that. I mean, that's why we saw that Firecracker Evo deck with just like, you know, like a 3 elixir to get all the way back around, 4 elixir to get all the way back around, as that Evo to RG just shreds Sosa's tower, and Ta completely in control as of now. I mean, it looked like he was in a little bit of trouble, but it just kind of felt like he was slow playing it. You know, right-hand side has taken some good damage, but that was an absolutely wonderful send on the left.
And you see Ta sets up the Monk to the right-hand side in preparation for the Desperation Royal Giant out of Sosa, but keep in mind, from a cycle perspective, Sosa didn't have his evolved Royal Giant. This one from Ta's going to get damage. Sosa decides, hey, he's not going to fight it, just regroup and get ready for game number 2.
I mean, that deck, when you talk about a 3-card cycle, is devastating. You have the Monk on the board, super tanky, with the ability can live forever, and then you've got Goblins, Barrel, and E-Spirit to just kind of add to that insult to injury. You get an RG in the back, the Monk's on the board, you can get a second Evo to RG down, easy money. It's a fun deck to play.
So here we go. Game number 2, RG out on both sides. Looking like it's going to be either Mortar Miner or more likely Miner Firecracker. We'll see what the choice is here for Ta.
Yes!
There you go.
Ta, new favorite player.
You know, Andrew, one of the really interesting things about the Mortar is not just that it is tankier and throws a Goblin, but that when the Goblin lands, we're talking about its spawn pushing troops around. And so it's actually created, we've seen some Mortar connections to the tower that might not have happened because the Goblin spawn ends up pushing the targeted troop into range.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, I honestly absolutely love it. You and I were talking before the show about the Evo'd cards in general and what we think of them. And I actually think that, shocker, the Mortar is the most perfectly balanced Evo'd card. I think it can turn a game on a dime like we saw earlier with that Hog Rider tanking for that one Goblin. But I also think it's controllable enough. And you just talked about that extra HP. I think the extra HP is enough to where you notice it. And maybe it's a little more than it needs to be, but it doesn't become something like taking care of an Evo'd Firecracker when you don't have Fireball. You know, it doesn't feel like the game is just over. I love the Evo'd Mortar, and I know that it's not a surprise because I'm biased anyway, but it's not just because of my bias.
Slight Elixir lead towards Sosa, so he chooses to try to take advantage of that one. Does not have an ability to take off the Skarmy play by Ta, so the Elixir advantage does not turn into much for our number 3 on the leaderboards as we go closer and closer to double Elixir.
You know, I'm a little medium on like Mortar baity decks right now, just because Firecracker and Evo'd RG are so dominant. It feels tough sometimes for Bats, Skarmy, you know, things like that. Evo'd, or not Evo'd, but like Skelly King abilities to get a lot of value just because Firecracker Splash does so much work. So we'll see if Ta can kind of play around that in this matchup. This is not an easy matchup, at least in my opinion, for Ta. I mean, he does have good answers with the Snowball, and obviously the Mortar and the Skarmy is kind of nice, but I feel like he might be in some trouble as we get deeper into the game.
And you see how much Elixir has to be spent by Ta to contend with the Evo RG. You saw the high Skelly King to keep the damage off tower, then sending the Miner up there as well, and that's going to result in some hog shots on the right-hand side. So that high Firecracker being used more as a bait than anything else by Sosa. And that's going to turn into some now good dual lane pressure.
Yeah, I mean, and look at how annoying the regular Firecracker is. I mean, that's a thing that like almost doesn't get talked about enough, right? Is like we talked about how annoying the Firecracker was for years already. It's not like she got any less annoying. It's just that the Evo'd one is so tough to deal with. But that one Firecracker right there from Sosa was alive forever.
Hog gonna get some, no, does not. It takes a little bit extra damage. 1240 on the right-hand side. Sosa starting to extend that lead as we are now in sudden death.
Yeah, this is a really tough one to play through. I mean, that Firecracker is so much value on all the good DPS doing units. The Musketeer is kind of the only X factor here for Ta, but there's just, I mean, again, look at that. Hog at the bridge, Firecracker behind, and so much Elixir to clean it up.
But ended up doing a good job of it, right? The Musketeer's gonna get on tower now, get a couple of good shots. No damage from that last one. And now the low Evo Mortar, Snowball to help, trying to keep this Hog off our Bats will contribute to that, just EQ damage. So Ta adjusting nicely as we go to triple.
I just don't know how Ta is gonna keep up. I don't, you know, he's down by 800 HP, which is not the end of the world when you have a minor poison deck with a champion. But I think when you're going up against Hog EQ with this type of pressure, and obviously you throw evolutions into that equation, it just becomes really difficult. I mean, basically Ta just needs to get minor poison damage and then a lucky Bats or Musketeer connection, and it just doesn't feel like that's possible.
What a really nice defense there out of Ta, and now Minor Poison starting to get in. He does have the 3-card Minor Poison cycle, but it's not that fast of a cycle as you might normally have with that sort of combination. Here we go. Will this Hog get on tower? And it does get a very critical shot here. Second Hog in, 20 seconds left. This feels like the end. Snowball does hold on.
Wow, and that was a very fortuitous Firecracker interaction there for Ta, since he played the Skeleton King up high. Would have just ended the game, but still not going to be able to take it here. And it will be Sosa taking game number 2.
Very important game number 2. Keeps Sosa alive here, and now we go into our third and final. Firecracker, Barbs, and Skellies all available for Ta from the Evo side. Also from a champion side, Golden Knight still on the board, and we've seen that Firecracker synergy.
So looking in the past, Ta, every time he's played 3 games in a set, has always used Firecracker, RG, and Barbs. But seeing game number 2 that he went with Mortar means that we'll probably see Firecracker here in game 3.
And what a fascinating choice there from Todd to use the Mighty Miner ability when he saw the Valkyrie to move the Mighty Miner to the other lane. So very, very interesting expenditure of Elixir just to change where the conversation was taking place.
Yeah, it's a good play, you know, in terms of like, all right, what's going to happen if the Mighty Miner goes into the Valkyrie? Well, it's going to take some damage and then work down the lane slowly. Whereas if you get the Firecracker on the board in the middle, you can kite that Valkyrie and you can support the Mighty Miner in the opposite lane because the Firecracker, if placed correctly, will work towards the right-hand side. So it's like super small, but it's a really, really nice play just because the Valkyrie becomes so easy to control with Firecracker.
Miner in goes to the inside corner. Skeletons with a nice play up high by Ta to pick those up. Chip damage makes things almost even. Lead still for Ta by a hair.
And I like going with, you know, not Mother Witch, with Archer Queen here in this game from Soki. I think it's going to be, you know, Evo Mortar Miner, kind of an old version of this deck that we saw. AQ can be kind of tough to deal with.
Well, dealt with nicely on defense there by Sosa. Snowball. We saw how many good defenses Ta can make against Hog with it last game. We'll see what Sosa can come up with here in this game.
Yeah, and when you look at Evoed Firecracker in general, there aren't really any decks that she's played in that use a big spell, right? It's usually always like Log NATO with Ice Spirit or Log EQ. Yeah, I mean, that's really honestly the two most popular ones. So if you go with Archer Queen, she all of a sudden becomes a lot more difficult to deal with when you don't have a big spell. Although when you have a walking, talking poison in an Evoed Firecracker, she becomes a little bit more manageable.
Poison itself doing a nice job against Firecracker there, though. So we are seeing some good work by Sosa. Still, it's Ta with the lead, 1594 on that left-hand side, doubling down with the Hog into that lane.
I'm curious about the Hog and Evoed Firecrackers just right at the bridge as this game moves forward, looking at like the way that Sosa can deal with units. It's basically kind of play them right in front of your Princess Tower or an AQ to the side or a mortar. So it's like he's going to have to pick and choose how he wants to defend, and then Ta has to conversely figure out what's out of cycle and how best to abuse it.
Is it surprising to you how little mortar's been involved in these Hog defenses?
It's a little surprising how little the mortar's been used, but I understand not wanting to use it too much in the Hog defense just because you're not going to get really any value. And you're also going to give Earthquake value as another Hog shot comes in. I think your point, though, Rich, is why is this card not being played more? And I think that Sosa does need to figure out a way to get it involved in the conversation. With only 80 seconds remaining, it is one of your win conditions.
And Archer Queen getting some good value all the way around. She'll stay on the board. Firecracker does take her out, and that's a classic Firecracker. Skelly's to protect, so no matter what form she takes, absolutely impactful. Hog to the left-hand side. Now Mortar being played high. EQ does take care of business, just as you said. Miner now going in and going Firecracker, and that's the hard part here, right? Is that the poison, essentially your two best damage dealers for Sosa in this situation, the Miner and the Poison, both being forced to contend with the Firecracker rather than do tower damage.
I mean, I've been in this spot so many times before that Sosa's been in, and there's really no way around it. The game's over already. He's within EQ cycle range. I think, and again, I don't know if this is the correct thing to do, but since this matchup is everywhere, like literally everywhere, that deck on the bottom of your screen, everyone is playing it right now, and big congratulations to Taz. He makes it on through our upper bracket. I think in this situation, at least when I've found some success, is when I start to cycle my Archer Queen in the opposite lane, is when I start cycling some things in the opposite lane. Because the problem with what you're talking about with using the Mortar defensively, or, I mean, we actually saw the perfect sequence at the end there. Mortar was used defensively, EQ came in, gave value, and then the Valkyrie was played up high, and then the Firecracker got shots on the tower, right? It's like this horrible, horrible and beautiful synergy if you're playing that Hog EQ deck. I think if you can start creating pressure opposite lane, then you don't allow for those wonderful Hog EQ Firecracker pileups. If you just have a little bit of pressure created with that Archer Queen, but then the other part of that is there's so many good ways to control the Archer Queen with quick cycle cards. So I don't know if that's exactly what he needs to do, but I think you and I both recognize that he wasn't doing enough. Sosa was not figuring out a way to play through that matchup, or he wasn't even figuring out ways to try to play through it because he just felt like he was stuck between a rock and a hard place.
Well, and it's one of those things, too, and maybe he was kind of buried with the mortar early on, and you talked about how hard it can be to play the mortar effectively against the Hoggy Q, especially late in game. But in single, when your opponent is feeling less free to play Hoggy Qs aggressively, it felt like maybe the mortar could have gotten involved a little bit more earlier on, but that's in the past, and now in the future is Ta moving forward, heading into our next stage of the upper bracket and securing some very important points for our leaderboard.
Yeah, and I guess the other part of that too is like, even if you change up your defense early on and you're using less mortars and more like Ice Spirit guards, for instance, just the idea of varying it up makes your opponent have to like think a little bit more about their next attack. But since he wasn't ever using the mortar, Ta was really free to just kind of continue to do what was working. So you look at game number 1, RG mirror matchup, Ta ends up taking it there. We've seen the Monk get used more and more. And yeah, this was just a well-played match by Ta. Ta known as kind of an RG player. At least I've seen him play a lot of RG. Then we go to game number 2, and Rich, I'm curious your thoughts. I know you don't play as much mortar as I do. I don't know if anyone does other than Igor, but the bait cards right now, when Evo Firecracker is available, feel just a little bit iffy in terms of pulling that as a deck.
Yeah, it's one of those ones, too, where you look at that deck choice and you're going, hey, Firecracker's still on the board. I think it's a big buff once she's off, but you also have to think about how many cards are being played specifically to worry about Firecracker as well. From the big like we've seen a lot of double spells. We've seen Zap getting involved more. We've seen Arrows, Fireball. So it does seem like a kind of an interesting choice to go that heavy on the bait cards. You understand the desire to support the Skeleton King, but, you know, I just don't see it yet.
And then we go to game 3, and that same conversation kind of gets thrown in the mix. You know, there was parts of it that we were talking about, like, well, okay, well, when Firecracker's available, she's not really used with any big spells, so how can I abuse that? Well, maybe I go to Archer Queen, because she's a card that really, really relies on your opponent, or not relies on, but can exploit your opponent not having a big spell. But the problem is Sosa just played everything in the same lane, it felt like, for the entire game. So Hogs getting through, EQs getting on top of mortars, Firecracker shots coming aplenty, and then if all you have is minor chip damage and then triple elixir minor poisons, it's just not really going to work out for you there. So it's Sosa going to get sent down to our lower bracket as Ta continues to work his way through the upper bracket. We have our upper and lower bracket set, so I'm sure we'll check in with that in just a moment. But AC, you're back. Good to see you. Any thoughts on what we just saw?
I loved the offensive bomb towers from Ta. It created such a weird dynamic where he couldn't throw up the mortars because, I mean, you guys were talking about it the entire game. Why is he not throwing more mortars on the board? And really it comes down to he should have. It should have been more aggressive because he doesn't really have the opportunity to just kind of wait and sit back. But it really comes down to Ta just dominating the board, and those offensive bomb towers are a huge reason as to why he could pull that off.
Well, he got a very important win there. Let's go take a look at our bracket and where Ta will end up. And he'll have a very tough out against Faust, but, you know, we talk about trying to chase those points here. Arden Toas, Igor, and Ta all in the upper bracket. A single more win for them will add so much to those point totals. So every single match mattering, of course, for golden tickets, but big ones for those 3 players who are in the points hunt. Ta will face out against Faust. Down on the bottom, Sosa picking up Dark Angel. We'll see that a little bit later. But fellas, I'm jealous because I'm going to take a seat for this one. But we get a major elimination match, probably the biggest elimination match of the day at the very minimum. Morten versus Ruben coming up next. And man, Andrew, this one, if you're a longtime Clash Royale League fan, like I know all 3 of us are here, this is pretty much the big one. Let's take a look at our predictions as you tell me a little bit about your picks here.
And And yeah, I mean, okay, we all went Morton. I hate it because I want to win, but I do understand why, right? I think, and you guys cut me off if I'm speaking for you and I'm incorrect here, but based off of those first 2 games, Morton was outplayed by Igor by just a little bit, right? It was the first set of the day. It felt like the Evos really kind of dominated that set. And then when we got to game number 3, the macro understanding of the RG matchup, even though it was, you know, Royal Ghost versus Lumberjack, Morton ended up falling to Igor. Whereas when you looked at the Ruben set, it felt like Ruben just wasn't playing Clash Royale at the level that Ruben and other competitors are playing at. The missed defenses, the hog allowing, or the hog tanking for the Goblin, and then the hog hit later on as we all just kind of stared at it. I think that's why we're all going Morton here. It felt like Morton lost the way you're supposed to, and it felt like Ruben lost the way you never want to.
And that's probably a pretty good analysis there. Josh, where on the other side of things, you and I both picked the same way in our next 2 picks, Sosa and Igor. And I like this pick here, Igor over Ardentois. You've been hot on Ardentois, but what'd you see from Igor in that first matchup that makes you pick him there?
I mean, I have always been a huge fan of his micro, but I've never been impressed by his deck selection and by his macro. Right there in that first set, you know, the macro was great, and the micro, I mean, really sometimes it comes down to, hey, it's the first set of the day in a competition. I'm not going to play my absolute best, but that's okay, because if I do everything else, I still win. I expect to see Igor clean up a lot of his mistakes, and if he's going to clean up his mistakes and have good deck selection and have good macro, he will be on pace to win it all.
Well,
he might have just convinced me.
Yeah. Well, this will be a big one here. Either Andrew will continue to be, I don't know what the actual scores are. I don't know if production has the scores of how much Andrew is leading by, but this is a potential for a big swing in these next few matches, and maybe Josh and I can catch up to Andrew a little bit here. But speaking of catching up, as we go into our next matchups, we have 2 players who don't need to catch up. They just want to stay alive here. Morton way ahead on points. Ruben in that number 7 spot. But you know, both of those want a golden ticket here, Andrew.
Yeah, you know, AC, you and I are on the cast for this one, and Rich and I were on for the very first one, at least for Morton. What are your thoughts on that Ruben cat? You know, we called it earlier. I kind of just called him out, put him on blast, whatever you might call it. Again, I'm a huge fan of Ruben. How can you not be? But what do you think was going on in that game 1? Do you think it was jitters? Do you think he just was caught looking a couple times from Arden's aggression? I mean, it just felt really, really uncharacteristically not Ruben.
Yeah, I mean, I'm taking a look at the matchups because you started talking about him, and I was agreeing with everything. I mean, I really like the analysis, and I was kind of shocked by what we saw. He didn't defend a mortar. That's not something that we get to say about Ruben. We're always impressed with how he analyzes matchups, and so to see what we saw was just kind of odd. It's such a contrast to what we usually see that I feel like we should just ignore it and just focus on this set.
You know, and that's a great thing for you to point out, because a great way to ignore that is by looking at his numbers that got him here this month. He played 3 sets in our qualifiers against some of the biggest names in the game: Faust, Samuel Basoto, and Air Surfer. In that, he played a total of, let's see here, 7 games, and he lost 1. That's it. He lost 1 game to Air Surfer. Other than that, it was a 2 over Basoto, 2 over Faust, and then obviously a 2-1 set win with 1 3 crown in there against Faust with a mortar, with an Evoed mortar cannon cart deck. So yeah, it does feel very uncharacteristic. Maybe he thought that he had just a bigger lead than he did. Maybe he thought he was 5 steps ahead instead of he was only 3 steps ahead, and that game got stolen from him. But both these guys having to do something that they don't like to do, which is bounce back from losing, but it's something they both had to do in their careers, which is why they're 2 of the most storied players in Clash Royale history. But who's it going to be? Is it going to be a repeat, or will Morton be able to turn the tides?
And I think the introduction of player cams just has to be my favorite thing about CRL, because getting to see players react when they see one card get played is always such a joy to see. And we saw him we saw Morten kind of shake his head, put his hand through his hair because he seems kind of frustrated. And you have to assume that maybe just the slight difference between one or two different cards can make this matchup unfavorable for Morten. Just the fact that he has goblins and the fisherman could be something that puts him in the advantage, and we'll just have to see what happens in this game.
Yeah, Morten obviously opting to go much quicker in terms of the Ice Spirit, or the E-Spirit, and those skeletons, at least being played early on here. And Goblin's going to do a little bit more than Skellies against that Evoed RG, as Ruben getting some good shots in right now.
Yeah, and right there, getting very aggressive. The Barbell actually in front of the Phoenix, which could be a slight problem, but no, because of the E-Spirit, it activates the Phoenix Egg. And Morten, that is a massive mistake because now the Phoenix is back on the board. The entire thing with the Barbell getting cycled first, I was going to say, oh, that's a problem because now it's going to be easy to separate the two cards and you can defend easily. Right there, though, that E-Spirit activating the Egg was massive for Ruben. And I mean, so far he's dominated, but this is the thing with these Evoed RGs, they do so much damage every time that you don't know who's going to win until the clock hits 0.
And I'm very curious to see where Fishermans are going to come out and when they're going to come out here. And there's the Fisherman down low from Ruben. You see the predictive Skellies coming out there from Morten, and I really like that play on both sides. But Ruben just looking into the future, or at least looking to the better option. He plays that a bit lower, 1673, 882. Morten down by about half of Ruben's damage here. And all because of what you were talking about with that Phoenix.
Yeah, and I'm just waiting for the Evoed RG to come out from Ruben, and we haven't seen it just yet. RG will make it across the bridge, but here we go. We have a Barbell plus 2 Phoenix, plus the Evoed RG. So this is the push that Ruben was waiting for.
And there's the Fisherman late, does get the E-Spirit connection, but still locks onto the RG. Now an E-Spirit plus Skellies, plus a Barbell comes down. Morten spends an arm and a leg to stay alive. 10:59, 5:17, Morten down, but still in it. Evoed RGs both out of cycle right now, sorry.
That's right, yeah, and one thing you do have to recognize is that Ruben had the chance for the game right there. That game could have been over if he just blocks at the bridge, and right there, Morten on the opposite end, he is gonna block at the bridge, and he is gonna win because of that play.
And that block at the bridge was, it felt, I don't want to say obvious, but it felt obvious, man. That's what you got to go for. It's what you got to go for every time. And I do understand, you know, in the previous one, Ruben defended differently. He pulled it down, so maybe he's looking for something, but I think you still got to pull it down. You are going to take a shot, but Ruben had the luxury of giving up a shot. If he was able to get more DPS on it, great predict there by Morten.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, if you know that you only need 2 or 3 shots from the RG, especially an Evolution RG, well, then you know your opponent has to flip it to the opposite lane or has to take it into the middle. And if you know that, you need to be able to predict. It's obvious, and okay, it's obvious, but as always, I mean, this is a fast-paced game. As obvious as it is, you still have to think within 2 seconds. Oh, wait, okay, I'm playing an RG, I need to block. And sometimes you just don't get it off in time.
I know, it's like when you watch your replays, you're like, the game doesn't go this slow when I'm playing it. So a nice King Tower activation there. Morten still kind of shaking his head, not super happy, even though he does have game 1 and a King Tower acto early. Ruben going with almost no evolutions. I mean, kind of. Right? I mean, skeletons, who knows? We'll see.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. At least he has a champion on the board, though. So we do see the Monk plus the Loon going to be another push, but this really isn't the scariest push ever. The Bomb Tower plus the NATO, it's always going to be able to clean it up nicely as long as he defends it properly. And right there, it actually does get the shot. Crazy enough. I think Morten got a little bit too aggressive on offense, because he should have had the elixir to defend that.
Yeah, and to go back to your point about the cams, I also love them. You saw Morten there right after taking that bomb hit going, all right, that was probably a little, not the best decision. So we'll see if he kind of course corrects, and knowing Morten and knowing the respect he has and the history he has with his opponent, he will most likely give that respect, as Ruben playing very, very good in most of game number 1, but slipping there at the end, it felt like.
Wow, really solid Firecracker interaction to have the Firecracker bounce back. But then on the flip side, Ruben with the great snowball, he's going to get it down in time, and that way the Firecracker gets taken out right here. This should be defended a little bit more simply. I would like to, I mean, he's still going to need the NATO and all.
Yeah.
Oh no, okay, defends it without the NATO, and this is going to be a really strong counter push because of that.
Yeah, Firecracker going to get pushed back. Nice log there from Morten to get on top of the skeletons, and more splash damage coming in. Another Firecracker shot in, and just like that, it feels like the game is over. I mean, I know I hate calling games early, but when a Firecracker does that much damage, it's so tough to keep up with. Now, luckily, Ruben has Balloon, right? He does have a win condition that can just steal a game, but with Morten's Ice Spirit, Firecracker, Bomb Tower, NATO, I don't think we're going to see anything other than drills. Maybe Firecrackers if the opportunity's there offensively, and that's it. It's just drills, game over.
Yeah, and right there, Morten's actually kind of just sitting back, and I think he's thinking the exact same thing. As long as I don't overextend, as long as I don't do this, and right there, Ruben, look, as simple as a play that is to try and activate and try and protect it, that's still kind of just a great play. The only way you have a chance is if you pull off some magic with your Evoed card, and that's why Evoed Skellies just aren't that scary. We see it, Morten cleans it up nicely, gets the set victory, 2-0 sweep, and Ruben knocked out already, but not only knocked out, 0-4 for the day, so he'll need to come back and just change some things up. But we know it's Ruben. He's gonna be able to do that.
That's a good call on the day, AC. I didn't even really think about how tough of a day it's been here for Ruben, but Morten will stay alive. That was the pick for all three of us, and honestly, it makes sense, right? When we look at the things that we talked about and the way that those games broke down, it did just feel like maybe just a little bit more time spent with Evoed cards is what Ruben needs. The Evoed Mortar really got him. The Evoed Firecracker really did work to him there. And then again, here at the very end, understanding the macro, right? What you need to do. This is what you needed to do, Ruben. You had the lead. You have the lead right now by 800. You have the lead later on in the game at the end. Right there, you still have a 500 HP lead. That's, I think, just under 2 Evoed RG shots, right? So you pull it to the center, you take a shot, whatever it is, you just get some defense in. So Morten goes with the most obvious play. As you said, AC, this is a very, very fast-paced game. Ruben maybe just not able to get there in time. And again, I think it just comes down to reps. And, you know, that Evoed Firecracker, you see right there in the replay, we were seeing like 3 lineups in a row that Ruben gave Morten for that Firecracker. And some of the best moments we've seen today, AC, are when we're talking about people playing not even reactively, but predicting Firecrackers are going to come down and preventing them from connecting.
Yeah, and right now, I'm just taking a look at Ruben's battle log to see just how many of those matchups he could have flipped. And I'm thinking at minimum 2, but it realistically could be 3 where he could have won had he just done 1 or 2 things just a little bit better. So just a really rough showing from Ruben, and I would be shocked if we saw that again. This was an important must, so maybe the nerves got to him. But anyways, game number 1, it was just RG versus RG. Slight differences in the deck, but really it comes down to who knows the deck better. And right there, it showed Morten knew the deck. He had to protect his Evoed RG. He did it perfectly, and he was able to get the win.
And then to talk about your moment, AC, might have just been the skeletons, right? Might have just been this fact that it was skeletons versus goblins that maybe kind of annoyed Morten for the moment, just knowing that goblins could put in more work than the skellies against Evoed RG, but did not end up being a factor. And then something that you and I talked about a lot when we were having the pleasure of casting Royale Masters, whether it was their Summer Clash party mode event or their dual mode event, Evoed skeletons, are they a thing? No, they are not. I don't care. Go ahead and at me. Do it. At me with your really cool replay of your skeletons taking a tower, but you know, 5,000 trophies or whatever. At the competitive level, we have seen maybe 10 plus games with the Evoed Skellies, and then we have never seen them have effect other than I think one time, and it was like a fluke. But even Mo Light wasn't able to do it with the Evoed Skellies. So Rich, what are your thoughts on the Evoed Skellies?
They should become guards, or like slightly stronger guards or something.
That's
the
cool. I like
multiplication
that.
thing of them just doesn't really seem like it does a whole lot. They're still very we talk about how overly strong RG and Firecracker are. This evolution seems more like a party trick than an actual evolution. So, there's still time to find other cool things that they could do. I think if they could turn into guards or something might be kind of neat. But
flying guards? No.
Who knows? Yeah, they fly when they evolve. Who knows what it might be? They hover when they evolve, so you can't log them off anymore.
Yeah,
there's a bunch of different. There's a bunch of possibilities there. But they're a little underwhelming as far as evolutions go overall. Also a little underwhelming is some of Ruben's deck choice here, right? Going to Balloon right now with the Skeletons pick. Where one of the things we were looking at in this year was for Ruben to mix up his deck choices a bit. And he goes back to, Ruben's known for RG, for Hog, and for Loon. And he goes for Loon here. It doesn't work out. And now we go to our bracket and we see one very important person missing from that. And that's one of our 2020 CRL World Champions.
Yeah, I mean, you go back and you look at the Ultimate Challenge leaderboard, as we're going to look at the bracket here, but there's not one deck that has Balloon in it other than Lava Loon Freeze. Other than Lumberloon Freeze and Lavaloon with Evoed Barbs. There was a quick minute there for about a week where that deck version of the deck that Ruben ran, a quick cycle Balloon Miner Snowball deck with Monk, but just it's not there anymore, and it's not there for a reason. So I agree with you, man. A little bit of a surprise there, and also a predictable pick as we have our last few matches of the day. 3 more in the tank, as you just said, man. Ruben, goodbye to him, but we still have Dark Angel and Sosa. We're going to say goodbye to one more competitor, and then of course Igor and Arden, and then match number 8. We're all going Faust, but can Toss surprise us as we get into the next matchup of the day? Dark Angel and Sosa. Why did you guys pick Sosa?
For me, Sosa is coming out as one of the top newer players or less experienced in CRL players of the year. Most importantly, not only does he play really well, but he seems unflappable, right? Win or lose doesn't seem to affect his mentality too much, and I think that can carry a player. That's such a buff to your skill set overall when you're strong mentally, and for me, that makes him a big pick.
AC, what's your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think in his set against Ta, it really came down to deck choices. It's Monk versus Ghost, and so the Monk is going to do a lot better than the Ghost in the RG Mirror, and so he loses that game. And then he lost Mortar versus Hog Quick Cycle. So it's not like you can really analyze his gameplay and say he did anything too wrong, besides just before the game actions. And so I'm still impressed by his gameplay. Dark Angel had a few missteps, and Sosa, he had a solid set 1 even though he lost.
If I'm being 100% honest, I want to be predictions champion again. I know it's shallow, it's selfish, but that is why I picked Dark Angel. I don't think either of them did anything that really blew me away. I will say that Dark Angel, it felt like he had a really, really strong start, and then Faust kind of just Fausted. And I think maybe, I always feel bad when I do stuff like this, but I do feel like maybe Dark Angel's competitor was a little bit stronger than Taz in this round. Again, no slight to the other competitors, but that's just how I feel. I don't know why. So that's how I feel. So that's why I went with Dark Angel, and I want to be the predictions leader. And I saw that you guys picked the other guy. So that's where I'm at.
So just full swinging. Hey, you know what? Push your chips all in and see what happens. Andrew, just gonna contrarian this one and go for it. You know what, Andrew? I always respect that move. So I'm excited to see how this one shakes out. So it's going to be a pretty fun one here, and I'm going to keep on talking about the point side of things. Because we did just see Ruben exit, and he needs to be very, very wary of what happens now, specifically with Arden, Toas, and Ta. Because every time they win, they continue to catch up. Already, for both of those guys, they've gained 10 points over Ruben this time around. And yeah, we can see this. Ruben at 280. And so Arden and Ta. Arden at 240 coming into the weekend. Ta at 230. So just making it here this far is another 30 points for everybody. But those wins for Arden and Ta give them 10 more points than Ruben, so they can make up that ground. Another win for either of them means they make up 20 points on Ruben. So they start nipping at his heels in a really nasty way, Josh.
Yeah, I love that you bring this up, because I've been talking to a lot of players, and all of them, they need very specific things to happen for them to be happy with this monthly finals. Certain players need this guy to win and this guy to lose because, you know, you want the Mortons and Fausts to actually have a good monthly finals. But what you really don't want is the Rubens and the Sosas, because the lower you are in points, the closer they are to surpassing them. So it's really interesting to see the dynamic between players that are real close to the threshold of qualifying and that they want certain players to succeed and they want certain players to get that golden ticket. Because if Morton gets a golden ticket, now Air Surfer is just bumped up to the top 7. So it's amazing to see what happens.
Well, and then the other side of it, you look at Dark Angel, a person that's so far down compared to a lot of these other guys in 42nd, you know, you add in the 4 players that already have golden tickets and move it down to 38th. This is huge. A win here, extending his run in this monthly final, can push him up into that conversation of people that we could see if they're in that top 7. Whereas right now it feels like he's really outside of striking range to get into this top spot on our leaderboard. Wins here to stay alive is absolutely massive. And then you wonder if that pressure will make him play better than he did in his first game. I felt like he almost felt a little too relaxed in his first set, but I don't know. That could just be me.
Very likely. And Josh, you talked about this one. I think that if you're someone else on the leaderboard, if you're anywhere below 7th position right now, you want Morton, Faust, or Sosa to be the golden ticket winner to push people up. So Sosa needs to be in that conference. It's crazy to think about it, but that's how much he's improved. But now we're in a situation where Sosa's in an elimination match. If Dark Angel eliminates Sosa, it kind of, in some ways, yes, it puts him up higher on points. He definitely wants the win, but it in some ways hurts everybody else and even himself to a certain degree by taking one person who could make room for a points person and taking them out of contention. So this is a really interesting match from a lot of different angles.
Yeah, I can't wait to, I'm going to figure out like 20 pros that I want to mention, and it's going to be a lot of the players that are in that 7 to 25 range, and just ask them if they are happy with how the monthly finals went. Because I think it's just going to be different answers for everybody, because they're not sure. There's so many different factors, and it's so cool to think about. Now that we're in these final 3 months, there's so much just worry about who's going to make it.
So here we go into game number 1. Dark Angel going with the not often seen anymore Royal Hogs, and we'll see if he's running the mirror variation against this Drill Firecracker deck.
Yeah, I want, oh man, if I used to have it all memorized, but it was like certain 1 Elixir cards meant it was going to be very specific types of decks, and it looks like this is probably just going to be the regular Recruits version with, oh man, I forgot what the deck is, but it's going to be interesting to see the final 2 cards. And right here, it always is kind of funny to me how good Inferno Tower is against these Royal Hogs. It cleans it up so nicely.
Does a very good job. Barbs splitting behind King Tower with the Heal Spirit just trying to hold a little bit. Not too much damage there on the left-hand lane. So interesting, rather than Recruits going with the Evo Barbs.
That's right. Okay, I actually really like I like this idea a lot. So Dark Angel going to be running Barbs, Royal Hogs, and then on the other end, Sosa just going to be running Quick Cycle Drill. That's what we're used to seeing throughout this weekend.
Dark Angel currently 4-0 with this Piggies deck. We'll see if he can make that a clean 5 here. So far, a slight lead, and the dual lane pressure turning into a bit of an uphill battle for Sosa, but as you said, Inferno Tower doing a good job holding on so far.
Log slightly mistimed, and so it forces out the Goblins. Not a huge problem, but those interactions always can change something. Firecracker over the middle, and Dark Angel does have the Fireball as the last card, so he will be able to clean up the Firecracker fairly easily. And this is a great deck. I love whoever created this deck, because this has so many answers to all these popular cards.
Arrows plus Fireball, so as long as he keeps his sequencing right, should be able to handle Firecrackers, although we did see in our first game of the day that not happening. The Arrows Fireball getting out of sequence as the arrows missed in Igor versus Morton game 1. Of course, Igor's still alive right now it's Dark Angel continuing to add to this lead as he takes the zappies here against that Goblin Drill.
Yeah, and it feels like every game I've ever seen with Flying Machine is the reason why it wins and it loses, and it's not any different in this one. Flying Machine is just going to get so much value every time it's on the board, especially because you have those arrows and that fireball for the firecrackers. You just have to play it in the back and let it go to work.
Good Golden Knight dash, does not turn to tower though. You see the power of that NATO synergy, even though Golden Knight has fallen down the list of top-tier champions. You're still seeing its value right there. Fireball for the Evo Firecracker, exactly what Dark Angel wants.
Yeah, and so, I mean, Sosa got a lot of damage with that push. I mean, saying it's a push is just crazy to me, but it actually is. Firecracker at the bridge is a slight push, and right now, Firecracker, it's going to come down in time, but the Flying Machine taking it all the way out. Dark Angel, 51 seconds left, 400 HP advantage.
Triple Elixir, and here you see it is trying to create an opportunity for a good Golden Knight dash. Does get damage on tower, and that NATO will give the lead to Sosa for a moment. I don't know if he can hold off against this. Piggy's in, Goblin's going to work. Piggy's will do a lot of damage. Flying Machine still alive, 841, 30 seconds left.
And there we go. I mean, the Tornado on defense, but I just don't think it's going to be enough. I mean, this is an onslaught of Elixir coming down the lane. That's a good fireball, and he is able to protect it, so he does have time. 15 seconds left. He can get on the aggression, and he can steal this game still.
Drill in, log to support. Is there a Golden Knight? Oh, NATO tries to make enough room. Goblins do get some damage. Fireball down. Will the arrows be enough to get in here? No, they won't. 523 to 475, and Sosa just pulls the rug out from under Dark Angel in the final seconds.
I mean, you have to know your opponent is going to have a last-ditch effort. What is the only possible thing he can do to get it on tower? He has to NATO troops away, so you have to keep your spells in check. They have to be ready for that offensive pressure, and he just doesn't do it. He's not... He didn't think about all the possibilities. And Sosa, I mean, really, he was thinking with 20 seconds left, all right, well, I have one more opportunity. If he's not fully prepared, I still have a chance, and it actually worked for him.
And so here we go, game number 2, and it's going to be Firecracker coming out with the wall breakers for Dark Angel, looking like an RG variation for Sosa.
And we saw the first time Dark Angel ran this deck, he got matched up against Lava Loon. This should be an easier matchup than Lava Loon, but I mean, it's Evo'd RG, so it's still not going to be easy, let me tell you that.
First minute away, and lead for Dark Angel at the moment, courtesy of the work on the right-hand side, but Sosa happy to relax here, and we'll see if it's going to be pretty difficult for Dark to hold off against the RG pushes once they start coming in.
E-Spirit plus Bar Barrel taking everything out. 500 HP lead for Dark Angel, but I mean, last time he had the lead as well, and it didn't work out for him, so it comes down to once double Elixir hits, that's when Sosa's going to be able to start really setting up some pushes.
It's going to be interesting to see how Dark Angel decides to defend the Royal Giants piece by piece, right? Because you got to defend the first Royal Giant. It's still a Royal Giant. It's still super devastating. But you got to figure out how to defend against it as cheaply as possible so that when that second Royal Giant comes down, you have the sequencing you want. Look, Dark Angel has the Ice Spirit to stun it for a second and let Goblins do their work. He has the Bats that can damage that RG without getting the stomp hurting them. He has the ability to use a Firecracker and bait the Fireball out away from the troops that are on the RG. He has tools here. Just the question is, can he sequence them properly, and can he get enough of a damage lead early on that can actually be impactful as we get in the double and triple?
Yeah, and I mean, the problem with Dark Angel's deck is that while he can get aggressive and while he is going to be on the attack for 90% of that game, the 10% is just so intimidating to him. He has Bats, but his opponent has E-Spirit. He has Goblins, but his opponent has Bar Barrel. He has Firecracker, but his opponent has Fireball. So there's so many options to defend his defenses.
And look at how much he's spending on the RG on the left-hand side, Royal Giant to the right. Inferno Tower is certainly impactful here. That is absolutely massive as the building choice, and this is going to tip the scales, not all the way in the favor of Dark Angel, but certainly give him a better look.
Yeah, absolutely. The difference between Inferno Tower or Bomb Tower is insane when it comes to the RG matchup. The RG will get taken out by the Inferno Tower, especially when you have the Ice Spirit to just slow it down for an extra second. So this Inferno Tower is going to be the reason why he wins or loses. As long as he can protect it, he should be fine.
Fireball into the Inferno Tower on the left-hand lane. Troop stack for Dark Angel on the right-hand side. Wall breakers here primarily for kiting and protection. Does avoid most of the damage. And again, just trying to turn this into a fight played high rather than in the second level where that will advantage Sosa.
And right here, 2 Firecrackers going down the lane. Log helping out slightly, but yeah, I mean, Dark Angel is just... He's doing a great job of getting things on the board and just keeping them alive for a little bit longer than we're used to seeing.
He's trying to predict the skeletons and electro spirits as much as possible, but you see, again, that's the third time in a row Dark Angel throws the log directly down the middle, and we've seen skeletons play to the inside now multiple times, and electro spirit play to the outside. Dark Angel needs to take a risk and start going with logs a little bit more cheeky inside and outside if he's going to get real damage, but first, he has to defend against this Evo RG.
Yeah, Fireball is definitely going to come down to help, but it's actually going to go on top of the Firecrackers, so he's not going to worry about the Inferno Tower. Barbarrel was able to protect it, and with 30 seconds left, this is the push that he was looking for. Lumberjack will get on the tower.
Absolute devastation. Does it hit again? And it's... How many times have you seen the rage from the Lumberjack be the tower finisher? Sosa gets it done. Dark Angel out here on our first day.
Dark Angel clapping it up for his opponent. Always a respectful guy, but good lord, that was so much damage so quickly. And really, he was dominating the entire time, but you just knew it was going to happen. Just one Evoed RG in Triple Elixir was going to be the difference. I mean, wow. He really had no shot with all that was coming down the board.
Yeah, I mean, that just it got too thick. It got too thick there too fast. And with the Barbarian in deep, and we're now taking a look at the first game here. This was, you know, people, we can't forget here. This looked like Dark Angel had it all the way sewn up. The deck he was undefeated with was in a pretty good position, and you see here going full. The spells at the end, not able to do it. But this was the push where just everything got in front of the Evoed Royal Giant. The Inferno Tower was no longer a factor, and trying to cycle best he could, but best he could wasn't quite good enough. And I really think that, I don't know if they would have changed the math entirely, and that maybe I'm going a little bit too strong here, but Dark Angel kept on throwing the log right down the middle, and Sosa was just avoiding by going E-Spirit to the outside, Skeletons to the inside, never took a risk, and it feels like in that matchup, Josh, that Dark Angel needed to take a risk to take a win.
Yeah, and actually, I really do like that you point out the fact that he always used the log in that way, because even just using the log on defense and trying to set up defenses more often could have been advantageous, because he could have cycled a second Firecracker before he was able to get the second spell in, and he could have just used the log plus the Ice Spirit to help out the Inferno Tower. I really think that matchup could have been in Dark Angel's favor, even in that final minute, if he would have just played a little bit slower and utilized that log a little bit better.
Well, game number 1 went to Sosa despite Dark Angel pulling out the big stuff. Really nice work with the NATO to get the damage on tower. And then, as we saw in game number 2, Dark Angel going to the minor Firecracker deck, the Inferno Tower keeping him in it, but Sosa overwhelming as this very thick version of Royal Giant seems to do pretty much every time, Josh.
Yeah, it is. The only time we see it lose is when it's going against another RG and it's a Goblin's variation or even just an exact mirror match. There's so many different ways to play every single matchup with that RG deck, and it feels like none of them are wrong. You can set up a double RG push. You can set up just a singular... It's crazy to see it evolve because it always used to be double RG, and that's how you broke through, with one RG on the left side, one on the right side, Lumberjack, Phoenix, opposite ends, and now it just feels like, even though you can do double RG opposite ends, you're just looking for that one singular evoed RG to put in work.
I think the only way to get it wrong, Josh, is to not play the RG. Other than that, you're in pretty good shape. Andrew, we now whittle ourselves down a little bit further. Sosa in our top 3 for leaderboards, but still in the hunt now for the golden ticket. Thoughts on the match that we just saw? Was it as one-sided as the result, or was it closer than it felt?
I was yelling. I was yelling at the end of both of those games because I'm losing horribly now in my predictions. I mean, really what it comes down to at the end of the day is just reps, period. Like, Dark Angel just is not playing enough Clash Royale. And I don't care if he ats me. I like Dark Angel. I picked him to win, you know? But when you watch the way that he played the ends of those games, there was no dual lane pressure in that second game at all. Like, if it's not working, AC, you've always said this to me, at least try it. Right? At least try. If what you're doing isn't working, you got to try varying things up. If the E-Spirit is such a problem and he's only got Barb Barrel, then try to do dual lane pressure. Get some like wall breakers with Bats late, or get Bats' defense on the other side so you bait out the E-Spirit, so then you can, whatever it is. And then the first game, AC, you called it, and it's exactly, again, like, our job is to do this, so I'm going to put him on blast. Like, there's one way for Drill to do damage at the end of a game, period. It's to NATO things away. That's it. Even I know that, right? So it just feels like it's reps, and that's what it comes down to, which is why Sosa is probably the better pick. And so while it wasn't as one-sided as it felt, it truly was from a macro standpoint when you look at how those games ended. That's enough, Dark Angel. I really do love you, man, and congratulations on where you got. Let's take a look at the bracket as we do say goodbye to Dark Angel after I do a little bit of a roasting. I'm sorry, but I don't think I'm wrong in what I said.
No, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there. And speaking of hitting the nail on the head, we're talking about both the golden ticket hunt and the standings. Morten and Sosa, 2 of our top 3 there in the elimination side. So for those of you playing along at home, one of those top 3 players is guaranteed to not get the golden ticket. So I know that everyone will be watching these ones very closely, especially what happens in those lower round 2 brackets. If you're one of those players who's in that hunt, if you're someone like Air Surfer, Kickash, Vitor, Mini Minter, Surgical Goblin, currently at 14th overall in our standings. Lucas currently at 16th. Sandbox in there. Any of those players looking very, very closely at that one. But then we go to our top, and man, the bangers keep on coming. Josh, this is the one you wanted to see. Igor versus Ardentois.
That's right. I cannot wait to see and it kills me that I'm not going to be on the broadcast for this because, I mean, Igor, we're talking about reps, and Igor played 18 games. So at the end of the day, like, actually, and I do agree with everything you said, Andrew. That was great. But like, reps are everything. And the fact that it doesn't mean everything for Igor is crazy to me. It's crazy to the community. Everybody's responding. You'd have to have a second account, but you know he's not lying. You know he only played 18 games. So it really is going to be a joy to watch this set.
Yeah, that was actually great of tying those two together, because I think I agree with you. Of all the people out there in the world, like I said, there's SB and there's Igor, where anytime they show up, I'm like, hey, who knows? Who knows? He just reinstalled it today. Well, let's see what happens. Who knows what could happen? And that's exactly where Igor is. And then to talk about the play style of these two competitors, you know, it's tough because it's almost like Arden replicates certain things that Igor did when he was younger in terms of the aggressive play style. And then what we're seeing out of Arden, at least from today and a little bit more this year, is the maturity of slowing down, which is also something that we got from Igor right when he came out, right? So, I mean, Igor really had the greatest rookie season of any CRL pro, period. So it's hard to meet his rookie status, but at least in terms of how they play and where they're at right now, it feels like Arden is getting to where Igor was at his prime. And then I'm wondering if Igor can ever get to where he was at his prime and then surpass that. Now that he has more experience, maybe he's not as, like, you know, stubborn about his deck picks. I mean, we haven't seen that at all today. He hasn't played Evo and Mortar. He's leaned into the strongest Evos. So I really like this matchup. I'm very excited about this matchup.
Well, let's jump on into it. Igor looking like he's ready to tell a computer to play tic-tac-toe over and over again. Ardentois ready to see if he can take down the guy that Andrew says should be his model. And we're seeing the delivery in here, and I have seen some people say that they might expect to see delivery start to pop in a little bit more to contend with those firecrackers as they cross the bridge.
One of the best cards in the game. Honestly, I think it's just one of the cards that gets forgotten about when there's a lot going on. I'm wondering if, literally, Art and I just did the same thing. Is Igor going to play like Miner, Inferno, Dark Prince, Rocket Control like he did back in the day? Already not looking quite like that as a Lightning comes on top of that AQ. There are versions of Mortar with AQ and delivery. And yeah, like you said, oh no.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Well, here's the question though, Andrew, is, you know, every other Evo you focus on the importance of the Evo. We wouldn't be upset about Skeletons other than the fact that they're taking the Evo slot here. If he just plays them like Skeletons and gets the extra advantage of them possibly, does that change the way you think about them a little bit?
I mean, look, if someone does it with Skellies, and I haven't watched this 2.6 deck, but it is up there, right? So that means it does work. There is some synergy out there with 2.6 and Evo'd Skellies, and maybe Igor's figured it out here. You know, very similarly, you have a tower-seeking win condition that's pretty cheap in the Miner. You've got Quick Cycle everywhere else around with Log and Delivery and Ice Spirit. You've got a strong building. So, and Igor's one of the best Miner players in the world, and he's one of the best control players in the world. So, yes, I agree with you. I think that if you're looking at Skellies as just a cycle card, I mean, that's why it was evolved. And I think that the idea behind it was kind of brilliant. I just think that in execution, it hasn't worked out.
Here we go. First 2 minutes away. Lead for Arden. And the moment that Evo RG comes down, he tries to go Queen opposite lane, but the Monk shuts down that idea.
Yeah, don't love that push. 6-7 Elixir push. Skelly's behind with the ability. That's more expensive than the Evo'd RG costs. So we'll see how he wants to deal with this as a perfect Fisherman goes across the bridge, soaks up that Inferno, and now RG should get one shot at least. No, doesn't get a shot, but a second RG comes down, now tanking for this Phoenix.
But now look at this, the Evo Skeletons, it's the Phoenix Egg that takes them out. Miner now going to get Goblins off the tower. Igor is doing everything in his power to try to stop this damage, and despite falling down pretty significantly here, still doing what I would have to say is a very admirable job in the situation.
Yeah, incredibly admirable. The Elixir deficit is going to be very tough to keep up with. That Log actually saves everything, because if that E-Spirit tanks for that Phoenix and more Elixir has to come down, which I guess he kind of spent anyway, the whole time Igor had to overspend defensively. When you have a deck like what he has, you actually want to underspend on defense because it is so cheap and you have such strong cards. But that Evo'd RG, the Fisherman over the river, that changes everything.
And Igor spending a lot on the opposite lane when he does have this Evo RG incoming. Rather than...
I don't love that spend.
Yeah. Log pushes back. The Skellies trying to do whatever they can here. Evo RG gets one, so only one. Very impressive.
But you called it, man. I mean, that's exactly the thing that you don't want to do is spend all that on offense and then leave an RG in the right-hand lane wide open. And, you know, Igor definitely struggling here, and he's going to drop game number one. I just don't know. I don't know about those Evo'd Skellies. I really don't, man. I mean, we saw the moment, and honestly, it was kind of a cool moment, but then it was hilarious that the death of another unit took them off the board, right? It wasn't even focus. It was just the death of the Phoenix cleared them off. So maybe they just need a bit of an HP boost. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but, you know, Igor tries to do something a little bit different, and Arden Toas, not only did Arden play a very clean match, but also he just had a deck that worked out better.
Yeah, that was a really tough one. And so far, it looks like the only way to beat an RG is with either another RG or by throwing your opponent's phone into a lake. So we'll see if people can employ either of those two strategies.
Yeah, but unfortunately, on the moon, there are no lakes, and that's where Igor's playing from.
So Monk versus Mighty Miner in this one. We'll see if Igor's running Firecracker here. That's the most likely, probably on both sides, in fact.
Yeah, agreed there, and EQ going to come put in some nice work here on the guards with a return push. And now going to need a little bit more attention, so Skelly's come down.
Yeah, smart snowball there from Igor, knowing he'd slow down the Princess Tower and the Bomb Tower, add a little damage, get the shot in. The question is, how much does that put him in the hole? No Elixir here to back that up with an Earthquake, so really just trying to force more Elixir out of Igor and maintain that advantage as Arden Toas as we get closer to the midway point of regulation.
Yeah, and these like Hog EQ mirror matchup games are so tough because it's all about like understanding your opponent's cycle, learning when you can abuse, and then really a lot of it is going to come down to when the firecrackers pierce and then EQ cycle damage. That's it. And Arden, again, not happy about how these exchanges are going. He just spent an arm and a leg there, and Igor has a lot to defend. So we'll see how he wants to do this. Monk ability probably going to come in here.
And does he get it off in time? Just barely.
Yeah.
Able to stay alive. Now, the curious thing for me here is assuming that Igor is playing Firecracker. Here we are 2 minutes in, and Arden's been getting Firecracker on the board. We have not seen it yet from Igor. That feels like a problem.
I agree. I think that now getting the first Firecracker down when we're in double elixir is a bit of a surprise. And yeah, I mean, maybe he was thinking he could get more single elixir damage if he didn't activate the King Tower. I'm not exactly sure. That's just me kind of reaching.
Big hog hit, 18-14. You see Arden Toa shaking his head there, not happy with the result of that one. And no King Tower activation either way.
Yeah, exactly. I was just going to say the things with these matchups is when you don't have that King Tower activated and you're kind of close in damage, that King Tower activation really starts to matter later on. And again, obviously the Firecracker piercing damage changes the whole conversation, but even with Arden going opposite lane already, it's starting to show that he's feeling a little bit less confident in working down this right-hand side.
Evo Firecracker does go down and doesn't get much to show for it here now. Firecracker being tanked for at the moment. Hog in, EQ helping. Evo Firecracker not doing a lot on the tower, but the Hog going absolutely hog wild. Wow!
That's it.
Arden Toas can't believe it.
Yeah, I mean, that's game. Now you just got to get your Firecracker on the board, get a Monk down, and start cycling those spells. Get as many EQs and snowballs in as you possibly can, and just end this game. Might even be able to throw a Hog down again, but honestly, no need for it. Just defend and spell cycle.
And here we go, Hog opposite lane, or opposite direction, I mean.
And Igor going with a high line there set by the Monk. Don't hate that play. Pretty smart play. And then he goes in with the EQ snowball. And that should do it. Just one spell cycle around. Boys, I'm coming back.
Yeah, that's a big win. That's a huge win. Igor taking game number 2 and going to game number 3 here. A little sweat on the brow of the former world champion.
Yeah, I mean, that was a close game there. Igor knows back up against the wall in terms of wanting to stay in that upper bracket. I still think that the upper bracket is the better place to be. I know that's like one of the most obvious statements in the world, but talking about your competition, I do think the upper bracket is actually much better. And Igor playing Mortar. Happy to see it. It's 2023. It's evolved, but my fandom has not changed at all.
Igor playing Mortar, but not in the Evo slot. So, what has he got in? What does he have in the Evo slot?
I don't know if that smile from him was maybe him just recognizing that he didn't put it in the Evo slot, but is that possible? I don't know, man. It feels like a bit of a misstep.
All right, so
wow.
Mortar freeze. Anybody?
So the freeze and the minions and the Mighty Miner, he's literally just looking for RG, right? Is that it? Because Arden didn't play it in game 1.
Yeah, I guess this is just absolutely. There are so many things about this deck from Igor that make me feel like this is old school Igor.
I mean, it feels like there's also a graveyard in there.
Yeah,
Mortar graveyard is a thing, and I think Arden is going, what is this deck?
Mortar graveyard Evo Barbs.
Yeah, that feels like more of the direction since. Yeah, there we go.
Wow.
So Barbs come down split in the back by both the competitors. As we also see some skeleton dragons here from Arden. So this is fun. This is weird. I'm into it.
There's a lot of splash damage on the board for Arden Toas, and not really any on the board right now for Igor. So that's going to be an interesting factor as we go forward.
And a high Mortar here to set the line for Igor again. As Rich pointed out, not evolved. Evoed Barbs are the choice from both competitors. As this Magic Archer just puts in an insane amount of work, yeah.
Very nice Fire Spirit there from Arden to get a little bit more protection out of it. And
freeze comes down, yeah.
The freezes are fascinating and strange, and I don't even know what to say about the deck choice, the gameplay choices. This is one of those ones, it's often where you're upset you don't get to cast one. This is one where I really wish it was you and Josh so I could just sit back and pay attention.
Well, I was actually just thinking, I was like, man, I love my job. It's so fun just to talk about Clash in general, but when we get moments like this where the game has changed so much, so rapidly, where you and I and AC, I'm sure AC is sitting back going like, what is this deck also? As we see a massive connection there on the left-hand side. Arden Toas now taking a huge lead as Igor finally gets a graveyard in, and those skeleton dragons actually gonna put in some work in terms of damage and not being able to get to him, but that freeze, wow, what a freeze.
A little bit of elixir advantage here for Igor. He does have to make sure that Golden Knight doesn't touch. Goes with the Mortar high, hopes for the connection. Magic Archer's going to stop that connection. Still, 585 to 921. This is really dangerous territory for Igor. The Archers do take it off.
And you saw there Arden holding last second to play that Magic Archer, not wanting to get it down, but that Mortar would have got a shot in, something he could not sacrifice. So here we go. Drill going to go in. Not back around to Magic Archer yet. Now is back around to Magic Archer. Yeah. And there we go. Right at the bridge. Boom. And that's the lineup. And that's the game, baby. You knew it was coming. We knew he was trying to get back around to it. Perfect lineup. Perfect send. And you can see there Igor even clapping for his opponent. It's got to feel good to take down a world champion. Arden climbing back up in the ranks. He's not gone yet. It's been a quiet 2023. But here he is getting some big wins for that leaderboard.
And that win guarantees Arden another 10 points. So he's, again, that's 20 points he's gained on Ruben today. That's a big win for him. And it's interesting because when you talk about players who they'd rather see from the pro side, some of them might rather see Igor win because they want that legendary level of play there from Igor coming. But some also wouldn't want Igor to win a golden ticket because that's a guy who's way down the leaderboards. So this is an interesting win from all that perspective, but a big win for Arden Toas, who takes many steps towards World Finals.
Yeah, and Arden winning is actually, I think, in terms of everyone else out there in the world, kind of a good thing, right? If he's staying in the upper bracket, he's already picked up 20 points. That puts him at like roughly 260, I think, which if I'm looking over here, based off of where we're at today, it already puts him up in the top, like, puts him in within striking distance because we got 4 golden tickets given away already. So honestly, if Arden just keeps this run going, the points and that golden ticket, it could do a nice thing for every other competitor in terms of, oh, he brought himself into the competition or conversation and then immediately took himself out of it. So Arden also is, based off the way he's played today, he goes 2-0 against Ruben, he goes 2-1 against Igor. That back-to-back world champions, by the way, in his upper bracket. I love what I'm seeing, man. This is exciting stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's really good stuff for Arden Toas, and of course, having that extra life to give on top of it has to be huge for his confidence. So adding points, catching up to Ruben, taking out world champions, having the life to give, everything going Arden's way so far in this July monthly final. And of course, we'll see a bracket in a little bit where we get to see who will be facing Igor in an elimination match. But right now, let's take a look at the review from Arden Toas versus Igor. And man, nice little 2-1 win, good recovery from Arden in that last one. And Igor with some interesting choices deck-wise overall, Andrew.
Yeah, that deck in the last game, I don't actually like hate it, and especially if he would have ran into Royal Giant, but his opponent played it in game number 1, which is what I was trying to remember, which is it's tough during dual mode because we can't go on in Royale API like during the match. But yeah, it felt like that game 3 deck was almost like picked specifically to go up against RG. You have the freeze, you have the Mighty Miner, you have air damage, but anyway, back to game number 1 here. Evoed Skellies, still not really the way to go. That's kind of what I want to chalk it up to. I thought it was a decent enough game. I just don't love the Evoed Skellies. Then we go to game number 2. We find ourselves in, you know, kind of a Hog EQ mirror matchup. Igor has some great snowball work, which just created a lot of space. And then, of course, the Firecrackers. They're always going to be a conversation. And I think that the Mighty Miner from Arden Toas just wasn't maybe as impactful as the Monk from Igor. And then you go to game 3, it's what we just talked about. I think that's really what it comes down to, man. And then at the end, that NATO was I don't know. I think it comes down to what I said. It's the bad pick here in game number 3. It doesn't really feel like this is exactly what you want to go with. And then, of course, the NATO at the end. It's really the only play similarly to that drill at the end of the game. What else are you gonna do? You know?
Yeah, you have to be contending with the with the Magic Archer at the bridge, much like the Firecracker at the bridge. You have to be winning that bridge fight. And we saw some big moments. And this was some of the defenses from Igor in game number 1. Were good defenses, but over time, the overwhelm, and this was the final blow here where Igor's trying to hold on, but we're going to get around to we already got around to the second one in there, and that one gets it done. So it was certainly a hard one. I do want to give a little more context, Andrew, to Arden Toas, because it's not just that he gains 20 points on Ruben, but by making it to the guaranteed top 4 he's in right now, he gets 50 points for the leaderboard overall. So he doesn't just jump up to 270, he jumps up to 290 points, which for the moment, barring other players' movement, will put him in that top 7 over Rainbow at 285. So that win for Arden was absolutely massive. Lots more to play this weekend. Other players could shake and bake and make some moves. But for the moment, at this exact second, Arden is in that qualifying range, which gives him even more smiles for this day.
And Arden, I love his aggression. I love even more what we saw here today was that he played much more methodical. And AC, I'd love to hear your thoughts on kind of the maturity that we've seen over the last 12 months from Arden Toas, or even just the last 7 months-ish or whatever since World Finals. I guess it's already almost been a year. It feels like he's grown up a little bit.
I mean, even today, it feels like he's growing up with the way he's playing. Everything he did today was incredible. And we're just seeing so much improvement from him. Before, it used to remind me a lot of Sergio Ramos, because Sergio Ramos came out on the scene with getting very aggressive pushes and nobody actually knew how to defend that. And Arden Toas was mixing in a lot of the same things that Sergio Ramos was doing. But now it just feels like, okay, even if the aggression doesn't work, well, I have other answers. I can still just dominate with macro and micro gameplay. It doesn't need to be me catching my opponents off guard anymore.
Yeah, well, that's a really great way to put it.
I was going to say, he certainly has caught a few people off guard with an elite level performance today. And again, that big step towards not just more points, but towards the golden ticket. And let's keep this in mind. This is the first time a golden ticket isn't in threat of being collected one more time by Mohamed Light. Now Arden only needs to win 2 more best of 3s to win a golden ticket and make his way to World Finals, and one of those will be against either Faust or Ta. So you talk about the hard outs for Arden. Andrew, with already taking out Ruben, already taking out Igor, has he taken out his most difficult opponents, or is that still in the future for him?
You know, it's really tough to say. I think because of, honestly, the point that you were making and how AC responded, it feels like Faust is actually still just as difficult as what he's run into along the way. I would put him right now, just because of what he's done in this year competitively and in the competitive scene and the respect from the other pros, I feel like Faust is just right up there with Igor and Morten and Ruben at this specific moment in this specific tournament. Obviously, the history from those players is very, very different. I think if I'm Arden, I want to just, I know, again, this is so obvious, but you want to stay in the upper bracket, because look at what can happen in the lower bracket. You might run into Morten, you might run into Igor, and then you're going to run into either Faust or Ta. So there's too many variables down there, whereas if you're just hanging out at the top, you know exactly what you got. It's either Faust or Ta, and then you've got time to prep for your next opponent as those matches gets played. I mean, those numbers are letting us, you know, the order that we're playing in, and if he's staying alive, he's got 3 matches to figure that out, you know?
That's a big one indeed. Josh, heading into our last match of the day, Faust versus Ta. This is a fascinating one, a not quite golden ticket monthly final winner in Ta. Faust, who has quietly been one of the best players on the planet, but never put it together in the competitive side, seeming like he finally might be having the year everyone's been waiting for. Thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, for me, I have been waiting for Faust to impress me in a monthly finals, and now that he has, I'm all in for Faust. I think he can put it together. He's had the skill. He's had the skill for the last 3-4 years. He just hasn't had. He hasn't had it come together. And so far this year, even though he hasn't been doing great in the monthly finals, the point total and the consistency that we've seen from him, does showcase a lot of great things. And then Ta, I mean, Ta was able to surprise us a couple years back with the monthly finals performance that netted him a golden ticket. But this one, Ta, he's definitely in a good spot, but he still hasn't shown me what Faust has shown us for the past couple years. And Faust going to start off with the Hog Log. Goblins to defend the Barbs that are going to be evo'd later, but not evo'd just yet. And just going to defend right now as we wait. And Ta already getting aggressive with the Inferno Dragon Graveyard coming down.
That's a really big push early on. I mean, I guess it's maybe because he recognizes the matchup with those first couple cards played, but I still don't know how I feel about that aggressive of a push.
Yeah, but right now, I mean, Faust cleans it up nicely, and it's weird because even though he is getting ultra aggressive, it really isn't that big of a deal because he can still clean it up very nicely, and now he does have the Barbs in cycle. We're just gonna have to see what the Barbs can pull off, especially, I mean, the last card is definitely gonna be, or the last spell is definitely gonna be arrows, so it really, I mean, just like every Firecracker game, it's just dependent on how much value he can get with a Firecracker.
And just as you call it out, AC, value coming in right there, and the arrows come down, so a little bit of damage in both directions. 2484, 2582. Line set high here with the Mighty Miner plus the ability, most likely, and there we go.
Clean defense. Skeleton King shouldn't. Oh, man. Okay. I'm trying to have more confidence with those kind of calls, and that was my first one where I was working on it, and the Skeleton King still hit the tower. So just know, everybody.
Room for growth. Room for growth.
Yeah. But that's what I'm here. You know, that's my favorite thing to do. Grow.
So evo'd Barb's going to come down on top of that Hog, and I don't know. I'm wondering if that is... Do you think if you know your opponent has evo'd Barbs in the Elixir and cycle, do you send in the Hog to just bait out the Elixir, or, you know, is it a bad play?
I really don't think it's a problem. Barbs are dangerous, yes, but I just think the Firecrackers clean it up so easily that it's not even really a problem. You're not really worried about the evo'd Barbs unless it's coming down with a Graveyard push. So when you use them on defense, you're not really setting yourself up for that offensive push that you have to be worried about.
So Arrow's getting nice value there on the right-hand side, cleans out the Goblins, gets in some good tower damage, and touches that evo'd Firecracker, but then a high freeze plus Tombstone do absolutely nothing. Evo'd Firecracker still alive, and just like that, Faust steals game number one in the blink of an eye. I mean, the game was kind of close, and then it was just gone like that. And Ta very upset.
Yeah, I have no idea really what happened for that interaction to be as devastating as it was. It just, all of a sudden, Faust found Elixir, and Ta... I mean, Ta's deck is kind of difficult to control the board, so I guess it kind of makes sense. Just crazy how it happened so quickly.
So, quick is as quick does, as dual mode in-game just hops right in, as... NATO coming out early for Faust here to get a King Tower activation, so already Ta probably not super excited about what his opponent's running.
Okay, I know it's very simple, but I just love when players recognize, okay, he's running Hog, he does not have NATO in his deck in all likelihood. I can play the Miner in the back. I love those small adjustments because, yes, the tower is only at 3003, but it could be at 3052. Just that slight adjustment from Faust nets him an extra 50 HP worth of damage.
Yeah, I mean, we see that little bit of damage be the separating or deciding factor in matches all the time, and we kind of saw it in both games, right? Game number one, we see that Ta goes in early and aggressive with that Graveyard, knowing his opponent's playing Hog EQ. Does it really work out? Kind of, right? He wasn't down in Elixir, and he got some damage out of it, even if he lost the game. And then in game two, exactly what you're talking about, AC, he sees Hog come out, and the first card, he knows, well, I can NATO that to King Tower, and I would be shocked if he played NATO Hog. So yeah, great calls there from both these competitors, and all right from you, I guess.
Inferno Tower to respond to the Hog Firecracker, going to clean it up very nicely. King Tower down to 3196, and still not something you really have to worry about, but with these Hog Firecracker decks, especially now with the introduction of the evolution, we've seen Hog Rider decks get the King Towers very low. And so when the buildings are over the middle, and now you have the firecracker splashing as well, it could become a problem as this game evolves.
I don't remember who I was spectating on ladder the other day. For some reason, I want to say Basoto, but it might not have been him. But they lost a 3-crown game when their King Tower ended up getting poisoned out. Now, why were they playing Hog Poison? I don't know, but it is ladder, and it was one of those things watching it where I was just like, how on earth did this happen? But like you said, it absolutely does. And you know, another thing that we talked about, or you talked about earlier today, but it's something that we talked about a decent amount, is these aggressive buildings, right? We saw, I think it was Pedro maybe in Royale Masters play aggressive Infernos that were absolutely dominating like the whole entire time. And then earlier you talked about the aggro bomb towers, and now we're seeing the aggro Infernos. These high buildings have been really, really fun to see.
Yup, and I'm getting more and more excited as this game goes on. King Tower all the way down to 1592. This is going to be very exciting, and it just shows that Faust is going to have to make adjustments with his defense. He can no longer just NATO the Hogs. He's going to have to defend with Inferno Towers instead.
Yep. And that's a really important thing. If you're a Hog Rider player, it might feel demoralizing when they have a building in NATO, but get that damage in early on, and all of a sudden your opponent starts to have to spend a lot more defensively, and then that's when the game can really start to turn in your favor. If they have to start, you know, piling things up high, that starts to give you those firecracker lineups. All these things change the equation.
Tower down to 2100, but I mean, he's getting 400 damage every single time. It's not enough just yet, but there's still potential for him to come back with this. We've seen it all the time with Minor Poison. If you can defend these firecrackers, you always have a chance to just make that 700 HP comeback.
I really like what Taw's doing here. He sent a Hog Rider down the left-hand lane and then EQ'd the right-hand side because he's baiting out Elixir to be spent that can't be spent offensively. And then the Elixir that comes out defensively by Faust on the left-hand side, he punishes by going offensively on the right-hand side. So it's been a really, really fun game of like cat and mouse here for Taw, but really he just has absolute control of the game right now.
Yeah, and I mean, you talked about it, I think it was in Dark Angel's game or something, where you need to be continuing to go opposite lane and trying to set up just different pushes on offense. And right here, Taw is demonstrating exactly why you do it. King Tower 944, Crown Tower 1034, left Crown Tower is 1800. This is an insane amount of damage, and I really do. We don't often get to talk about the damage as on the graphic as like a real graphic that is really valuable. It would be really valuable in this one to see how much overall damage he does.
And that's it right there. I mean, he's baiting out Elixir on the left-hand side. The overspend there on the left-hand side leads to this beautiful send on the right. And honestly, that was a masterful game. Now, Faust made that game really entertaining by playing so great, but that was a clinic by Taw on changing up lanes, getting damage where you can, always spell cycling on the lowest tower, even if it's not the tower you're attacking, taking negative Elixir trades and running with them. And, you know, as Morten has said in so many videos of his, if you're playing Hog Rider, you need to always be okay with switching lanes.
Yeah, I think that's the kind of game that you can replay as on Faust's end, and you can change all the interactions that you can do. Like if you could go into the game and say, oh, instead of this placement, I'd want it to be this placement, and Taw would still win because of how perfect his macro and micro was throughout.
Yeah, that was definitely just like a rock and a hard place situation, perfectly drawn up by Taw, perfect pressure in both lanes. And now actually a really nice ability here by Faust. You know, not a lot of damage out of it, but Skelly King tanks for a couple of those Larrys, gives him, 150, 160-ish damage. And now sets up for an Evo'd RG in the back.
Okay, I was wondering what the deck was going to be from Taw, and so Taw's going to be running Minions, Mortar, Monk. I mean, that can't be his only win condition with the Miner. I would hope he has another win condition besides Miner, because I don't know how much damage these kind of offensive pushes can get him.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Maybe it's Graveyard, right? Mortar Graveyard with Snowball?
Yeah, I think that could potentially do that. And speaking of potential, there's a lot of offensive push, and I think he might even have the RG in cycle for the Evo. This defensive poison is not going to do enough.
Just no Elixir in the tank at all for Ta, and this Barb will get a shot on tower, so down to 1242. 29-17 is what his opponent's got, and he's looking it right in the face. And let's see, GY with this, Zappy's in the back, poison it out, get late Barb barrels, Fisherman inside. I don't know, seems like a tough spot to be in if I'm Ta.
Yeah, absolutely. And right here, Faust just allowing the mortar to lock onto the tower. So he's going to split the Zappies, try and get a little bit of offensive pressure with the Zappy, but then just defend the mortar. So 2 shots is good, yes, but really I like that split because it just allows him to get the actual push that he needs.
And he is able to get that evoed mortar down just in time. Unfortunately for Ta, though, had to use that ability from the Monk early on, so then the Monk was not able to knock back the Royal Giant. And these poisons have been a non-factor for Ta. They have literally been spent defensively this entire game.
Wow.
And it is minor, so,
yeah,
dude, I don't know, man. I don't know about this deck.
Yeah, I just do not think it's strong enough. I think it's too simple for Faust to... I mean, it really doesn't even matter what the matchup is because a lot of these mortar decks are trying to stop the RG decks that we're seeing right now in the world, and it just does not look like it should stand a chance. I really do not like this deck choice from Ta.
Yeah, I don't really get it. I mean, I understand it in theory of like, okay, you got the Evoed Mortar that can be played offensively or defensively. You have the Musketeer and the Monk for knockback, plus you have the minions to do single target DPS that can't be targeted by the Evo RG. But I don't know, man. It just feels like a lot of like, again, like binary thinking of Clash Royale. Like, oh, well then if I have this card, then they can't do this. And I just don't think it's going to work out that way. But a decent push here on the right-hand side. Those minions are on the tower, but this should do it in time. There we go. Wow. Wow. I almost really cast or cursed Faust out of this set, but he ends up taking it.
I mean, it wouldn't have been your fault. Nobody could have predicted that. I mean, I feel like the fireball could have come out just a little bit faster. It feels like he waited for 4.5 elixir instead of 4 just to make it a game and stress us out.
He's like, if I fireball that Monk ability, I will lose instantly, so I'm going to make sure it's been gone for like 2 seconds before I fireball. Faust making it close there for our final game of the day, but does take the W as Ta is sent down to the lower brackets. So talking about brackets, we'll be looking at that in just a little bit. We have an exciting one for you. A lot of great competitors still in the mix, and a really, really nice set there by Faust. Just a couple really questionable decks on the day. I think we saw one from Ruben in that balloon deck, one from Igor with the Skellies, and then again here in this final game from Ta, just not really understanding the synergy. But as we look back through this set, I mean, you know, Faust doing what you need to do with this deck, just really abusing the firecrackers, getting good damage in, controlling the game, beating out those graveyards. Ta at the very end of the whole entire game it looked like he finally was able to get on offense, but it was just too little, too late.
Yeah, I think I need to do a little bit of research onto why so many players are using these graveyard decks with freeze. It's got to be for a very specific matchup, whether it's RG or it's Hog or just firecrackers. There's got to be some reason as to why we're seeing it just explode in popularity just today.
Yeah, well, when you look at the leaderboard, like, I always love to look at the Ultimate Challenge leaderboard because I think it really fuels a lot of conversation for what the best players in the world are doing. And for about a full week when Evos came out, Lumberloon Freeze was like way up there. It was like the #1 deck that didn't have an Evo card in it. And it's the idea that you can stop everything in its tracks. You know, the boulder can roll over that firecracker. The RG doesn't get any shots in, all that stuff. I get the freeze, but I just don't know. The graveyard, it just hasn't worked out yet. And it's not there on the Ultimate Challenge leaderboard. It hasn't worked out in competition today. I just don't quite understand it. And then, you know, when you look at it, when it's actually played, the firecracker just gets too much value. So I don't know about graveyard in game #1. As we go on to game #2 here, Evoed Skeletons. They're never gonna win. Like, I feel like if you want to lose a game in a set, just play Evoed Skeletons. If you want to take it to 3 games and make it more exciting, that's the best way to do it. And then until, I know it's very hyperbolic, but I just don't think it's wrong. And then you go to game #3. AC, what are your thoughts on this game? It felt like Ta's deck just didn't really find a way to work itself out.
Yeah, it just felt like there was never enough offensive pressure, and this actually speaks to just Minor Poison in general. And I think two things that we can look at are, okay, so I really want to take a direct look at Minor Poison and Graveyard Freeze. I think that we saw a decent chunk of it in day one, and I'd hope that we don't see it whatsoever in day two. I really don't think either of those decks get enough damage. We're in a version of Clash Royale where it's offense, 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 and for the last 3 years, it's been offense, defense, defense, offense, defense. It's been a lot more defensive, and with the introduction of EVOs, now we're only seeing fast-paced games. We're seeing consistent games where games are over by the time overtime hits.
Yeah. Yep, and that is something that we are not super used to seeing. A lot of games usually go into 4 or 5 minutes, and you know, a big part of that 6-minute getting rid of the draws was like to bring some more competition into it. Had we had Evos back then, I don't even know if we would have ever gotten rid of the draw. Rich, I know that it might have felt like we were being a bit harsh in certain moments today with maybe keeping up on your play and deck picking, but this is CRL. This is the highest level. Were those decks really as bad as we're kind of calling them out to be, or is it the matchup, or what are your thoughts on some of these? You know, the Rubens, the Dark Angels, and the Taz of the world today, and the Igors.
I think people are playing catch up to how you play Evos in duel mode. Right? If you really think about it, they've had a limited sample size of where to learn how to play duel mode with evolutions involved. You've had whatever practice you've done with your friends or teammates, and you've had Swiss and group stage. That's a pretty small sample size overall for people to be able to get their ducks in a row with. And I think that as we see EVOs more common, people will be able to figure out how to actually get those done in the right way. But right now, what I think we're seeing is some growing pains from a paradigm-changing thing being introduced to Clash Royale with not that much time to get used to it.
And those growing pains have come in the past, right? When champions came into the game, players were up in arms about them as well. And, you know, things are still settling. The meta is still changing every single day. We saw Balloon Freeze dominate, like I said, on the Ultimate Challenge leaderboard. But anytime Freeze was used at all today and Balloon was used today, just not really a ton of success unless it was in, like, Lava Loon with Barbs, right? So I think we have our bracket. I think we have our leaderboard. I think we have some things to check in with, some business to do here. As we said goodbye to Ruben and Dark Angel today. Congratulations to both of them on making it, getting points, and getting some cash. But Rich, we got a lot of action left and a lot of players who have been playing some really, really good Clash Royale.
And the movement that's going to be happening over the course of the next couple of days is tremendous, Andrew. And I think that's the biggest one. And Josh, I'm going to kind of send this over to you, because right now we have Faust in the upper bracket with a really good shot at, it's a tough out against Ardentois, obviously, but a really good shot at making it through and being a golden ticket contender. You have the other two guys at the top of the leaderboard here in Morten and Sosa at the bottom. Has day one, other than Morten and Sosa both being at the bottom, or even maybe not, has day one, if you're someone who's in that 8 and beyond range on the leaderboard, for the guys who are in the chase at the moment that we're not seeing today, has day one gone the way that they want it to go?
You know, I think, because especially when you look at it, Faust, Morten, and Sosa, even Sosa, haven't had too many great monthly performances. It really comes down to their consistency. And so, because it's consistency and not just, 2 special months from them, you kind of assume that they're going to be consistent in the next couple months, and they were going to put up points regardless. So I really do think it's good for everybody in that, 6 to 20 range for them to be competing at this level, because I think they were going to qualify regardless. I think they're just too good and too consistent.
And then, of course, Ruben dropping off, Andrew, opens up some opportunities. We've already seen Ardentois gaining points. Ta, if he can beat Morten, gaining some big points by making it up into that top 3 here. So lots of doors being opened at the moment. Who are you most excited about as we go into tomorrow's top 6?
I'm still most excited about Arden. I mean, he was honestly, that top match were my 2 picks for my Dark Horse Golden Ticket winner, and I ended up going with Faust over Arden. I think someone else, AC, maybe you picked Arden? I can't remember. Maybe I'm just making this up. Yeah. It feels like those are the two guys that are really the ones to watch. And again, it's so much about reps. I think that's the thing I've noticed so much today. You know, we said goodbye to Ruben and Dark Angel. And while I am bummed because I am fans of both of those guys, after watching their games, it felt like they were the two that had maybe had the least experience playing with the new Evo cards in terms of certain interactions and maybe macro understandings of defenses. So I think if anything to these top 8 players is you got 24-ish hours, probably, you know, closer to like 22, 21, you got to sleep, I guess, but go grind and do not play Evo'd skeletons. Don't do it. Period.
Josh, final thoughts on the day did Andrew just put the kibosh on it? It's just don't play Evo skeletons. That's it.
I feel like you shouldn't be able to say that, but I can't think of anything different. I really do like the idea of practicing because I was taking a look at Sosa's battle log when I was trying to just kind of figure out more about him. And as soon as the round of 32 was over, he was still practicing. And that's why we're seeing him being as consistent as he is. All these players that practice, the Mortons, the Faust, the Sosa, they're going to make the world finals. So I really do like the idea of just practice and get some reps.
Yes, we are talking about practice, but of course, we are back tomorrow for the real thing, 1400 UTC. Put that in Google, figure out what that means for you. Same time, same place, where we will crown a golden ticket winner and send one more person to Clash Royale League World Finals. For everybody here, I'm Rich Slayton, that's Andrew Guy, Joshua AC Sharon. We'll see you back here for the culmination of this event.
Only way you have a chance is if you pull off some magic with your Evo'd card, and that's why Evo'd Skellies just
Evo RG.
Yeah, Fireball is definitely going to come down to help, but it's actually going to go on top of the Firecracker, so he's not going to worry about the Inferno Tower. Barbarrel was able to protect it, and with 30 seconds left, this is the push that he was looking for. Lumberjack will get on the tower.
Absolute devastation. Does it hit again?
And not back around to Magic Archer yet. Now is back around to Magic Archer.
Yeah.
And there we go, right at the bridge.
Boom.
And that's the lineup, and that's the game. You knew it was coming. We knew he was trying to get back around to it. Perfect lineup, perfect send, and you can see there Igor even clapping for his opponent. It's got to feel good to take down a world champion. Ard Evo'd Firecracker, but then a high freeze plus Tombstone do absolutely nothing. Evo'd Firecracker still alive, and just like that, Faust steals.
Graphic that is really valuable. It would be really valuable in this one to see how much overall damage he does.
And that's it right there. I mean, he's baiting on Elixir on the left-hand side. The overspend there on the left-hand side leads to this beautiful send this card. Then they can't do this. And I just don't think it's going to work out that way. But a decent push here on the right-hand side. Those minions are on the tower, but this should do it in time. There we go. Wow. I almost really cast her Cursed Faust out of this set.